A ghastly discovery in their Ohio home.
Me and my wife just found a dead body in our freezer.
What did we just hear? In the frosty depths of the freezer, amidst the chilling hum, they discovered not frozen delights, but a dead body. What whispered of secrets long preserved in icy silence?
Oh, 911, what is your emergency?
Yeah, my name is Kevin. I live in Campbell, Ohio.
Okay.
Me and my wife just found a dead body in our freezer.
Dead body?
Freezer's up. Yeah.
All right, it's okay, sir. Is it a male? Is it a female?
I think it's a female. I need a Campbell police there right away.
We just listened to a terrifying 911 call, which was made on July 29, 2017. Before delving into the details of this call, let's address the essential elements. What, when, where, why, and who? Let us take you back to June 22nd, 2017, from where it all started.
In June of 2017, the Youngstown Police Department gets a call of a missing adult.
A missing adult? Yeah, right. You just heard that. Youngstown Police Department received a call regarding a missing adult, initiating the beginning of a compelling story. The question arises, who was the missing person?
Shannon Graves was last seen by her family around February of 2017, but the missing persons report wasn't filed until June.
So something was wrong, something was off.
As we move ahead, the detectives started searching for clues in Shannon Graves' disappearance, and they make a surprising discovery.
We discovered that in April of 2017, the Youngstown Police Department towed Shannon's car, and we had actually had it in our impound lot.
Shannon's car was being driven by her boyfriend, Arturo Novoa, and Arturo Novoa committed a traffic violation. There was a police officer present, tried to pull Arturo Novoa over. Arturo Novoa flees. He ditches Shannon's car, gets out of the car and runs, and he's apprehended.
That something else is going on here besides just a missing persons case.
Why did Arturo run away from the cops when they told him to stop? It's important to know he was driving Shannon Graves' car, who happens to be his girlfriend. If he had her car, where was Shannon? As authorities try to contact Arturo Novoa, a suspect in Shannon's disappearance, he avoids them, ignoring his door and phone calls. Then, on July 3rd, 2017, 11 days after Shannon went missing, her ex-fiancé, John Scarata, reached out to detectives.
He came forth with some information in that Arturo also had another girlfriend. We learned that Arturo was dating on and off again for many years, Katrina Layton. And we learned that she was in the picture the same time that Shannon Graves was in the picture. It was your stereotypical love triangle.
Shannon Graves, Arturo Novoa, and Katrina Layton. The tale unfolds with Shannon Elizabeth Graves entering the world on November 4, 1988, as the beloved daughter of Christine Graves and Ronnie DePaul. Within the family, she held a special place as the older sibling, but her affection for her brother AJ was unmatched and unconditional. Their bond was not just that of blood, but a connection woven with love and shared adventures. Among her friends, Shannon was affectionately known as Star, a nickname that captured her radiant personality. Moreover, she was always willing to go to great lengths to help her friends in times of need. Apart from her human connections, Shannon had a deep bond with her puppy, spending countless hours in his company. Their companionship a source of joy and a comfort in her life. Between 2014 and 2016, Shannon was in a relationship with a man named John Scarata and even got engaged. John had a roofing business, but also a criminal history as a drug dealer. He and Shannon parted ways while he was in prison. The exact details of their breakup remained undisclosed, but according to those who knew him, John still harbored feelings for her. In 2016, Shannon achieved a significant milestone by obtaining her cosmetology license from Raphael's School of Beauty in Boardman. Filled with enthusiasm, she looked forward to embarking on a new career in the beauty industry. During that year, she crossed paths with a man named Arturo Novoa, and their connection quickly evolved into a romantic relationship. They decided to share a home at Mahoning Avenue in Youngstown, Ohio. However, their relationship soon took a dark turn when Novoa became abusive, leading to their breakup in December 2016. Novoa moved out of their shared apartment, but just a week later they reconciled, and he was back living at Shannon's. Things were starting to look good for Shannon. However, everything was about to change. 6 months later, on June 22, 2017, the Youngstown Police Department received a call from Shannon's half-sister, Debbie DePaul. Debbie reported Shannon missing, expressing her concern. While it was not uncommon for Shannon to go without contacting her family for extended periods, missing significant events like her birthday and Easter raised red flags for Debbie, prompting her to reach out to the authorities. Even when Shannon's father, Ronnie, contacted Novoa, he claimed that she had moved to Cleveland to be with another man. Furthermore, the family repeatedly attempted to contact Shannon on her phone, but were unsuccessful. By that time, the police were aware that solving the case would be challenging due to the delayed report. Nevertheless, the investigations into the case began in earnest, with authorities putting their full effort into unraveling the mystery. It didn't take the police much time to do a background check and find out that John and Shannon's breakup occurred while he was in prison, causing him distress as per those acquainted with him and Shannon. Adding to the suspicions, John had been released shortly before Shannon was believed to have disappeared. Detective Mike Lambert from the Youngstown Police Department believed that John had both motive and opportunity to do something to Shannon. However, John informed the police that he hadn't seen Shannon since February 2017. He claimed she told him she was giving her relationship with Novoa another chance, but he also admitted to still having romantic feelings for her during their conversation. Due to this, the police couldn't shake their suspicions about John, a person with a criminal past and potential motives. However, lacking concrete evidence, their hands were tied, leaving them unable to take further action. Despite the suspicions from police, John, along with Debbie, was actively assisting the police in their investigation, and soon law enforcement made an intriguing discovery. This finding led them to identify their second potential suspect in the case.
We discovered that in April of 2017, the Youngstown Police Department towed Shannon's car, and we had actually had it in our impound lot.
Shannon's car was being driven by her boyfriend, Arturo Novoa, and that Arturo Novoa committed a traffic violation. There was a police officer present, tried to pull Arturo Novoa over. Arturo Novoa flees. He ditches Shannon's car, gets out of the car and runs, and he's apprehended. Shannon's car is then towed to the impound lot and remained there.
Arturo got a couple of tickets and was released on the scene.
The police conducted a search of the vehicle, hoping to find clues about Shannon's disappearance. But what they discovered would completely alter their initial perspective on the case.
We found a series of cardboard box tops, and we were able to determine that they had contained bottles of drain cleaner, which was mainly sulfuric acid.
That kind of elevates our suspicions that something else is going on here besides just a missing persons case.
At this point, Arturo Novoa became the main focus of the investigation. But the question remained, was he really behind the disappearance? Or was there more to the story? To find out, the police knew they had to dig deeper into the case, and they knew that the case was about to get much more twisted. The police made numerous attempts to contact Novoa, but he never responded or opened the door to his apartment. Faced with his silence, investigators turned to people who knew Shannon for information. They sought to uncover whether there were any suspicious circumstances surrounding Novoa, and if there were issues in his relationship with Shannon. And they did get some responses that would pique their interest.
Shannon and Arturo were toxic. with each other. And I know that he's put his hands on her. She was tired of it. She wanted to get away. She wanted to move on and have a better life.
11 days after Shannon was reported missing on July 3rd, 2017, the police received a call from the first suspect and Shannon's ex-fiancé, John.
John told us that Arturo and Shannon had broken up and that Arturo was upset about the breakup.
However, that wasn't the end of it. He had more to reveal.
He came forth with some information in that Arturo also had another girlfriend. We learned that Arturo was dating on and off again for many years, Katrina Layton. And we learned that she was in the picture the same time that Shannon Graves was in the picture. It was your stereotypical love triangle of individuals. So naturally, we have to look at her as a strong person of interest.
Now 3 people were in focus: John Scarata, Arturo Novoa, and his girlfriend, Katrina Layton. Now all police needed to do was to find them and ask what was going on. As the search efforts persisted, John had significant new information to disclose to the police, and this time, it was a major revelation.
John reported that a few known individuals had observed Arturo Novoa burning some of Shannon's items in a fire pit on the south side of Youngstown. In fact, another party helped him burn these items in the person of Andrew Herman.
Suddenly, the focus shifted from 3 individuals to 4 suspects in the investigation. This time, Andrew Herman also made the list. Information was scattered in all directions, the puzzle pieces lying disjointed. Assembling them was proving to be a complicated challenge, but the investigators needed one crucial piece to unravel the case entirely. However, the case was just about to take the most horrific turn. And this moment came when the police received a chilling 911 call on July 29th, 2017 at 5:05 p.m.
Call 911, what is your emergency?
Yeah, my name is Kevin. I live in Hama, Ohio.
Okay.
Me and my wife were just on a dead body in our freezer.
Dead body in the
Freezer.
freezer?
Yeah,
All right, it's okay, sir. Is it a male? Is it a female?
I think it's a female. I need to call the police here right away.
The scene was horrifying, and Ken and Jill Eschenbaugh, the couple who discovered the remains of an unidentified woman in their freezer, were left in utter shock.
They were absolutely horrified. They just couldn't believe what they saw in that freezer.
Me and my wife just screamed, and we came up, and I went to the front steps.
When Dan Caceres, the lead prosecutor with the Ohio Attorney General's office, spoke to the couple, a chilling tale unraveled. Jill told the police that she was planning to retrieve meat for dinner from a freezer belonging to a friend of her husband's. She explained that she was looking for ground beef to make meatballs when she was startled to find a padlock on her husband's friend's freezer. Using a screwdriver, she managed to open the lock, discovering stacks of black bags and a bucket inside, emanating a horrible smell. Alarmed, she asked her husband to investigate further. Upon opening one of the bags, he was horrified to find what appeared to be a human foot. When they looked closely inside the bags, they found the dismembered body of a woman wrapped in garbage bags, with the head missing. Now the question arose, who did the freezer belong to, and why did they have it?
He said my electricity's off. Can I put my freezer in your basement? I said, yeah.
All right, it's okay, sir.
Now the answer to the question of whose freezer it was quite unpredictable. But before revealing the person, was it actually Shannon's remains? Upon examining the body parts, the police made a significant discovery. One of the feet bore a scorpion tattoo, just like Shannon. The evidence was unmistakable. It was indeed Shannon's body in the freezer. Nevertheless, the police required a definitive confirmation. The remains were sent to the coroner's office, but due to the absence of the victim's head, the cause of death could not be determined. Despite this, the authorities were able to confirm Shannon's identity through her fingerprints. However, the police were now faced with the daunting task of unraveling the mystery of how she ended up there and when it happened.
In my deepest, darkest nightmares, did I ever fathom this occurring?
During separate interrogations, the Eschenbaus maintained consistent accounts, leading investigators to rule them out as suspects. However, a new individual came into focus, a man named Anthony Gonzalez, reportedly the person responsible for delivering the freezer to the Eschenbaus residence. Now, once again, another person emerged as a suspect in the unfolding investigation. While some aspects of the case were becoming clearer, simultaneously, the emerging details were also making it increasingly complex to pinpoint the killer. Investigators initiated a search for information regarding the new suspect, Anthony Gonzalez. And soon, Anthony was in the interview room with the police. Intriguingly, it didn't take long for the police to discover something that would change the whole course of the case.
So what is this about?
Developments since I talked to you.
And they find out that Anthony Gonzalez is actually an alias.
I know you go by Anthony, but for the purpose of this, we want to use your proper name.
Anthony Gonzalez is actually Arturo Novoa. He's Shannon Graves' boyfriend. But it's a shock to everyone.
Did you, at any point, take a freezer to a house in Campbell?
I did not.
So you didn't go to Kenny Eschenbaug's house on Devitt with a freezer, with a padlock on it and put it in his basement?
I did not.
And he is actually sitting in our interview room with the keys to the padlock. Those are things we can demonstrate right there that you're lying to us.
Now I have people that know you saying you brought a freezer to our house. When they opened it up, guess what they found?
What did they find, sir?
Why do you think you're here? The charge is abuse of a corpse.
Excuse me?
Abuse of a corpse.
Are you being serious right now?
I'm not fooling with you, man.
Additionally, investigators learned that Novoa was now in a relationship with Katrina Layton, with whom he had moved in just 2 weeks after the last confirmed sighting of Shannon. What made the situation even more unsettling was that they had moved into none other than Shannon's own apartment.
At that time, there was a lot of pressure for us to go into that apartment. When we would go there, knock on the doors, the dog would bark, so we knew the dog was in there, but nobody would ever answer the door. Katrina's car was parked there, and it just so happened that it had been parked on the street for so long and the plates were expired that we ended up towing that car. That is what triggered Katrina to come to us for our initial interview.
It was now time to have an extensive conversation with the two prime suspects, Arturo Novoa and Katrina Layton. At the same time, the officers had a few questions for another person of interest, Andrew Herman. The police managed to locate Andrew and his girlfriend, Michelle Illenfield, conducting an interview with them. However, the specific details of this interview were kept undisclosed for the time being. Rest assured, we will reveal the complete story behind this notorious crime soon enough. Now, let's jump straight into the interview with Katrina Layton.
So listen, while I got you here, one of the reasons we've been knocking on doors down there is because we're looking for Shannon.
Oh, yeah, I've heard something about that. I haven't really been following it all too closely.
We knew that she was living there. She had nothing to really add to the story about where Shannon might be.
When you moved in with Anthony, was her stuff still there?
No, I don't remember seeing anything.
Then her dog was there.
Yeah, her dog was there.
In her car. If she left her car, then how did she get in there? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, supposedly, I mean, from what I've heard, she left with some guy.
Katrina gave us basic story that, yeah, Shannon is Arturo's ex-girlfriend. She moved away with some other guy. What we later found out was a really bitter rivalry for this man.
At this point, it was becoming clear that the case was centered around a twisted love triangle.
What I could tell you about Arturo was he dated Katrina on and off for about 8 years. That included before and after Shannon's disappearance and death.
Now, the police were determined to dig deeper into the relationships, aiming to uncover crucial clues from Katrina's statements that could provide vital insights into the case.
She was extremely jealous, and they say she hated this new, really pretty girlfriend of his.
Arturo Novoa, while he was living with Shannon Graves, repeatedly had sexual intercourse with Katrina Layton. Katrina is completely obsessed with Arturo Novoa to the extent that she would wait 5 hours in a motor vehicle in January in 15-degree weather, waiting to perform sexual acts on Arturo Novoa in a car.
Such was Katrina's obsession that made it her involvement in this horrifying act plausible. The police, considering this possibility, now sought to extract a confession from her. They began systematically presenting the evidence they had, step by step.
So she leaves her car, she leaves her dog, she leaves his phone, and
No, the phone.
Anthony's
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
not new girlfriend, but old girlfriend who's now back is now using the phone
I
that
got
Shannon
you.
was using.
Yeah.
And
So it looks weird.
Simultaneously, while Katrina was being interviewed, the police had Novoa in another room, ready to gather information from him. It was now time to confront him.
you have no idea what became of her? Where she ended up?
I do not. I have said this to everybody.
However, Novoa was not going to give in so easily. In the meantime, the police worked to gather any available information about the two suspects, and they did find some crucial details that shed light on the characters of both Katrina and Novoa.
What was interesting was we found out later that that wasn't it for Arturo.
He was using other women too that Katrina didn't know about. We've got evidence in his computer that he was involved with at least 3 other women that he's sexting pictures with.
Having learned this about Novoa, they also uncovered further information regarding Katrina.
Katrina Layton is a mom with 2 kids. She was absolutely in love with Arturo Novoa. She was crazy about him. People described her as his on-again, off-again girlfriend. That when he couldn't have somebody that he really wanted, that Katrina was his fallback.
The police were quite sure by then that Katrina hated Shannon and had something to do with the murder too. However, she was yet to break down.
Maybe she got rid of her.
Do you see how tiny I am? Really?
But sooner or later, the police believed Katrina's resolve would crumble. Their attention was primarily on her, although they from time to time gave her a break and spoke with Novoa. They understood that extracting a confession was becoming increasingly complex, although Katrina's statements were gradually becoming inconsistent and unreliable.
There's been some developments.
All right, well, let me know what's going on. Why do you keep saying a body in a freezer?
Because there was a body in a freezer.
What do you mean there's a body in a freezer? And what freezer?
The freezer that you guys bought. You
Is
know,
it
I
money?
told you about 10 times that the missing girl is dead in your freezer. I'm looking for some kind of reaction to that.
Because
You don't
I'm...
look shocked at all. Yeah.
No, it's not that. I'm just trying to process everything.
Finally, when she became certain that the police were aware of the freezer being in her apartment, she admitted to buying it.
Let me ask you something. Forget all this. Did you kill her?
Hell no.
Were you there when she was killed?
No.
Okay.
What?
Well, sure looks like you did.
No. What do you mean it looks like I did?
She's in your freezer, the one you paid for. So it kind of looks like you killed her. She was banging your band.
You hated her.
And you are in possession of all her earthly goods. So it kind of looks like you killed her.
Okay, it looks like I killed her.
Her frustration was evident, and it wouldn't be long before she began mentioning things she shouldn't.
She thought she could outsmart us. She was almost as good as Arturo, except that she had the need to try to explain things, and in doing so, she let little things slip.
You guys are sitting here telling me that there's a body in this freezer that I did not bring to Kenny's house.
And that's when the interview went upside down for her.
You said anything about Kenny's house?
You just told me it was in Kenny's basement. I mean, I'm
We
assuming...
never said anything about a basement.
Well...
We never said anything
Kenny's...
about that.
Okay.
We never told you that.
Let's stay small. Girl in the freezer. What do we know about that?
I get that.
How'd you end up in your freezer?
The problem is I don't know.
Katrina was living in Shannon's house. She was driving Shannon's car, and she was looking after Shannon's dog. Yet she claimed to know nothing about Shannon's whereabouts. Such contradictions would easily raise suspicions for anyone.
The woman who's screwing your boyfriend disappears. And you basically
Slide right
into her life
with her dog.
and you don't know about it, and it's a coincidence that she ended up in your freezer.
I didn't know that she disappeared. I thought she left.
Well, she reappeared today.
I thought they broke up and she left with somebody because that's what he said.
As the interview reached a temporary halt with no confessions in sight, the police intensified their evidence collection efforts. During this whole case, Shannon's ex-fiancé John emerged as a crucial informant. As mentioned earlier in the video, he had informed police about Novoa burning items in a fire pit, and later a partially burned bracelet engraved with Shannon's name was discovered where the items had been burned. This revelation strongly suggested Novoa's attempt to destroy Shannon's belongings, possibly to eliminate evidence. To validate this claim, the police decided to approach a man named Steve, whose house served as the location for the bonfire. Investigators interviewed Steve, and he recounted that on March 1, 2017, Novoa had requested permission for a bonfire at his house, a request Steve agreed to. Novoa, along with Andrew Herman, brought Shannon's belongings to throw into the fire. Steve revealed that Novoa had told him about Shannon's supposed betrayal, which was the motivation behind burning her belongings. Police intensified their investigation and reached out to Michelle Illenfeld, who was Herman's girlfriend. She revealed to police that both Novoa and Katrina had killed Shannon, and it was Herman who had dismembered her. According to Michelle, Katrina's jealousy over Shannon's relationship with Novoa had fueled the crime. It became evident that the entire group of friends had collaborated to conceal Shannon's murder. The police didn't waste much time, and with all the evidence in hand, on September 17, 2017, Novoa was arrested and charged with 1 count of aggravated murder, 1 count of murder, 24 counts of tampering with evidence, obstruction of justice, and 6 counts of abuse of a corpse, along with 3 counts of possession of criminal tools, 3 counts of theft of WIC benefits, 1 count of grand theft auto, and 4 counts of marijuana trafficking. However, Novoa pleaded not guilty. However, on August 8, 2018, the police decided to confront Katrina Layton once more. They reached out to her, offering a deal that guaranteed leniency, no jail time and probation if she cooperated. Remarkably, the offer proved effective, prompting Katrina to come forward with information.
Well, I had got a phone call
From
Yeah. He was crying. I remember that. He was upset. Told him to come to the house. I didn't really know what the hell was going on. I mean, he pulled into the back of the house and she was in the trunk.
And then what happens?
He backed the car into the garage. I remember saying, well, you can't leave her in the trunk. At that point, I realized, I couldn't lift her. I was already freaking out, and that's when I called Andrew.
Katrina revealed that Andrew Herman helped Arturo dismember Shannon. It does give us something to talk to Andrew about. The only difference is now we're confronting him with what Katrina told us about him actually participating in the dismemberment. Big difference between burning someone's things and cutting them apart.
Following this, on December 18, 2018, the police arrested Andrew Herman for tampering with evidence and abuse of a corpse. However, prosecutor Dan Caceres struck a deal with Herman in exchange for testimony about the murder.
We proffered him, we met him. I told his lawyer, I said, look, if Andrew wants to be cooperative, he needs to do it. Otherwise, he's in a world of hurt.
So what happened, Arturo? He asked me to come meet him. Said he needed help. What'd you do? When I get over there, he told me to pick up a pair of garden stacks and open them up. I did. I had a bottle. Who was inside? Shannon. I started freaking out on him. So I my face all down.
He then stated that together they attempted to dissolve the remains using sulfuric acid. This story was consistent with the packages of sulfuric acid found in the car Novoa was initially driving. However, they lacked enough acid to dissolve more than her head, leading them to purchase a deep freezer to store the remaining remains. This account aligned with the details surrounding the freezer, fitting the pieces of the puzzle together at last. Now, all that remained was to confine these monsters behind bars. Following Herman's confession, Novoa agreed to a plea deal. In exchange for the dismissal of the aggravated murder charge, he pleaded guilty to all other charges leveled against him. On June 24, 2019, he was sentenced to a total of 48 years to life in prison at the age of 34. Subsequently, 29-year-old Andrew Herman also pleaded guilty to the charges against him, including treating a corpse with cruelty, engaging in a pattern of corrupt activity, and drug trafficking. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison in 2019. On the other hand, despite the initial deal made by Katrina Layton with the prosecution, which promised her no jail time and probation, new prosecutors took over the case and proved that Katrina was still in communication with Novoa while he was in prison. As a result, her original deal was revoked and she was ultimately sentenced to 18 years in prison, starting from June 2020. Michelle Illenfeld, Herman's girlfriend, was also charged with lying to a grand jury and intimidating a witness. She received a sentence of 2.5 years in prison. Upon release, she would spend 6 months in a halfway house and serve 5 years of probation. On September 30th, 2021, Novoa filed an appeal, arguing that his guilty plea should be deemed invalid because he was not informed that a judge could rule for the sentences of each count to be served consecutively. He further contended that the counts were not merged properly, leading to more convictions between them, which was not legally permissible. So, on October 1, 2021, the Supreme Court partially sided with Novoa. They upheld his guilty plea, but determined that the trial court had made an error in sentencing, stating that some counts were not merged properly. Consequently, Novoa's sentence was vacated and sent back to the state court for resentencing. In February 2022, Novoa was resentenced to 43 years to life in prison. The case was solved and closed, providing a sense of justice to Shannon's family and friends.
But what I don't understand is what she ever could have done to have these two people do what they did to her. I only got to bury part of her body.
I knew it before I heard it. Just everything around her being missing wasn't right. So we kind of didn't know the specifics or the gruesomeness of it, but figured pretty much something like that had happened.
Yet nothing could bring back their dear Shannon. All that remained were cherished memories, a bittersweet reminder of the life she once lived. So, do you believe Shannon's murder was driven by jealousy? Or do you think there might have been other factors at play? And in your opinion, was the final verdict satisfactory?
911. What's the address of the emergency?
Yes, I am. Probably you're not taking me to jail. Please let me go. Hello?
911.
There's been a shooting at 2710 Hilda Avenue.
Say the address one more time for me.
A shooting at 2710 Hilda Avenue.
Hilda or Hilden?
Hilda.
Hilda?
Yes.
Okay, and who shot who?
My husband shot my daughter.
Around 2:30 a.m. on June 18th, 2014, Robin Rutherford called 911 operators in Hamilton, Ohio, to report the most bizarre thing. Her husband, 55-year-old Alfred Rutherford, had shot their daughter, 29-year-old Lacey Rutherford, and her boyfriend, 41-year-old Steve Watkins, over a drug-related argument. When police arrived at the house at 2710 Hilda Avenue, they were shocked to discover that Alfred had shot his daughter right in front of his grandson, 6-year-old Brian, and some other kids at the house for a sleepover. When police eventually caught Alfred, all he had to say was, "They ought to pin a medal on me for this." Why did Alfred Rutherford kill his daughter and her boyfriend over a simple argument? Before disaster struck, the Rutherford family lived in Hamilton, Ohio and Butler County, Ohio. The large city of Hamilton has a population of about 63,000 people, and is famous for its vibrant art scene. Known as the City of Sculpture, you can find over 40 sculptures while exploring Hamilton, and you might enjoy a tour of the renowned Pyramid Hill Sculpture Park and Museum. Hamilton has a violent crime rate of 26.5%, higher than the national average of 22.7%. But for the Rutherfords, Hamilton was home despite its flaws. Lacey Rutherford was a 29-year-old mother of one, and she had a drug addiction. She and her parents, Robin Rutherford and Alfred Rutherford, often got into fairly serious arguments over her drug use, particularly her heroin addiction. Lacey grew up to become a troubled young woman who frequently had issues with the police, sometimes drug-related. By June 2014, Lacey had accumulated 5 cases at the Hamilton Municipal Court dating back to 2012. Some of her charges included theft, driving under suspension, drug abuse, and possession of drug abuse instruments. She had also fallen on some hard times because she couldn't keep a job for long, and she spent all her money on recreational drugs, so she had to move in with her parents. On June 17, 2014, Lacey appeared in municipal court on drug-related charges. At the time, in June 2014, 29-year-old Lacey and her 6-year-old son Brian lived with Lacey's parents in Hamilton. Around 2:30 a.m. on June 18, 2014, 911 operators received a call from Robin Rutherford at 2710 Hilda Avenue.
911, what's the address of the emergency?
Yes, I am. Robin, you're not taking me to jail. Please let me go.
Where are you at?
Please let me go.
911.
Hello?
911.
There's been a shooting at 2710 Hilda Avenue.
Say the address one more time for me.
A shooting at 2710 Hilda Avenue.
Hilda or Hildin?
Hilda.
Hilda?
Yes.
Okay, and who shot who?
My husband shot my daughter.
Your husband shot your daughter?
Yes.
Is she okay?
No.
Is that her crying?
No, that's her son.
Okay. Is she alert and conscious?
No.
No?
I think she's dead.
You think she's dead? Okay. How old is she?
28.
She claimed that her husband, Alfred Rutherford, had just shot their daughter, Lacey, and the daughter's boyfriend, Steve. According to Robin, Alfred had immediately fled the scene in his red Escort after committing the murders.
Where's your husband at?
He's leaving.
Okay, what's he driving?
A little red Escort.
Do you know the license plate? Are you looking for me?
FPS, I didn't get the rest of the plate.
What was the beginning of the plate?
I couldn't get the rest of the plate. He took off.
Okay, what's his name?
Alfred Rutherford.
Where's your daughter at right now?
She's laying in the hall floor.
Okay, where's the gun?
It's laying in the bedroom.
What kind of gun was it?
A shotgun.
A shotgun? But he doesn't have the shotgun, correct?
No.
Okay, what way is he going?
I don't know. He just took off.
Okay, what way would he be going down that street, though? Where would you be if you left your house and you went down?
Heading towards Millis Boulevard.
Towards what boulevard?
Millis Boulevard.
I can't understand you. What boulevard?
Millis Boulevard.
Nillis?
Yeah.
Nillis, okay. And you're at 2710 Hilda. You're off of Laurel Avenue?
Yes.
Okay. Can you go to your daughter for me?
Yeah, she's dead.
She is dead?
Yes.
Okay, where did he shoot her at?
In the throat.
In the throat? Okay. Yeah, go ahead. You stay on the phone with me, okay? I want to get as much information as I can get from you. Where do you think he would go? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea.
Towards Neelis.
In the background, the 911 operator heard the sound of someone crying. When they asked Robin who it was, she said it was Lacey's son, 6-year-old Brian.
Who is that?
That's her son crying.
Okay, how old is he?
6.
He's only 6 years old?
Yes.
Okay. Your daughter was 27?
Yes.
Okay. You're
28.
28. He's not hurt or anything. Your grandson's not hurt, is he?
He's not hurt, no.
That's just the way he went?
Yes.
Okay.
He went straight down Hilda Avenue towards Millis.
Okay, since you don't want to be able to do CPR or anything like that, do you want to go ahead and keep him out of the room and just like maybe go into the living room or something? Okay, let's do that. She said he just headed towards that way. He went straight down Hilda.
Yes.
Okay, we're trying to get the officers to find him. Does he have any family members or anything that he would have been driving maybe to their house or?
No.
Okay. Were they fighting?
Yes.
Have they ever gotten an argument like this before to this? I mean, or is this something that...
Yeah, they've argued before.
Okay. You don't have any family members or anything that you can...
No, not right off the top of my head.
Okay, what's your name, ma'am?
Lacey Rutherford.
Okay. Is that my officer?
Yes.
Okay, talk to him, okay?
Robin told the operator that she saw Alfred fleeing the scene in his red Escort, but she could not see the license number. First responders to the scene found Lacey lying in a pool of blood in the hallway. She had been shot multiple times, including a shot to the throat with a shotgun. As they swept the house to find out if there were other active shooters in the house, police found Steve in the bathroom. He had been shot once in the head with a shotgun. Brian, Lacey's son, and one of his friends had been in the house that night for a sleepover. While the kids were sleeping, Lacey and her father got into an argument over a gun that Alfred believed was missing. Alfred asked Lacey if she knew where the gun was because he suspected she had sold the gun to buy drugs, but the gun was not the only bone of contention. Lacey was going through a rough patch, and she had to move back in with her parents to save on rent cost. However, according to Alfred, Lacey allowed her friends to enter the house and steal things. In fact, he believed the missing gun was with Steve. As the argument got heated, Robin, Alfred's wife, got involved and started questioning her daughter about the gun's whereabouts and her drug addiction. Soon, boiling over in a rage, Alfred brought out his 12-gauge shotgun. When Lacey saw that her father had brought out the gun, she felt panicked, but in her anger dared him to shoot her. She said he couldn't, that he didn't have the stomach for it. It would be the last thing she ever said. Alfred raised his shotgun and fired several shots at Lacey, one of them hitting her in the throat. Lacey's 6-year-old son, Brian, who had been observing the fight, stood unmoving as he watched his grandfather shoot his mother to death. After murdering Lacey, Alfred went in search of her boyfriend, Steve, and found him in the bathroom. He raised his shotgun and fired once into his head, killing him instantly. Hamilton Police Chief Scott Scrimizzi later described the scene as very tragic. He said, "Unfortunately, there was a house full of people. Terrible situation because a number of them were children. The victim's son was present. It's a horrible situation, just a horrible situation." Alfred Rutherford, affectionately known as Ike to his friends, was a troublesome and troubled man. Growing up, Alfred had several run-ins with the police for petty crimes, like stealing and loitering. By 2014, he had built himself a long and colorful rap sheet. In Hamilton Municipal Court, Alfred had 17 cases dating back to 1989. Some of the charges included operating a vehicle impaired, robbery, drug abuse, and obstructing official business. But despite his legal troubles, Alfred was known as a nice guy to people around him, and his friends loved him. After searching for him for about 9 hours, police eventually located Alfred at Joyce Park off River Road, Hamilton, around 11 a.m. on June 18, 2014. He had ditched the red Escort and was now walking along Joe Nuxhall Boulevard, unarmed. Once police found him and arrested him, he was indicted by a Butler County grand jury for capital murder. Alfred was charged with 1 count of aggravated murder with a death specification for allegedly shooting Steve Watkins, and 1 count of first-degree murder for shooting his daughter, Lacey. He was also charged with 1 count of having weapons under disability and 1 count of being a repeat violent offender. His bond was set at $2 million. While in custody, Alfred admitted that he had murdered his daughter and her boyfriend without showing even an ounce of regret for his actions. Police officers reported that during a phone call, he was overheard bragging about his crimes, saying, "They ought to pin a medal on me for this one." Still, prosecutors offered him a plea deal. Plead guilty and avoid the death sentence. Prosecutors believed the case was simple. There were multiple witnesses ready to testify that Alfred was the killer, and all the evidence pointed at him, added to the fact that he had already confessed to the murders. A trial would only put unnecessary strain on the poor boy who had watched his mother die, and Robin who had to call it in. But this was not enough to convince Alfred to take the plea deal. Meanwhile, Alfred's lawyers, Greg Howard and David Washington, were working round the clock to convince Alfred to take the plea deal before the prosecutor's office withdrew it. According to Howard, the lawyers just wanted to make sure he was able to make his decision knowingly and intelligently and voluntarily. We had shown him all the evidence in this case months ago, and once again wanted to reiterate to him that this is what the jury is going to see, and the prosecutor's going to get up and call you a monster. It took showing Alfred the grotesque photos from the crime scene for prosecutors to convince him to accept a plea deal. He later told Judge Keith Spaeth, "I seen them pathetic pictures this morning, and it broke my heart." Finally, a moment of contrition, Alfred was no longer looking to be pinned with a medal for murdering his own family. In January 2015, Alfred Rutherford was sentenced to life without parole for the murder of his daughter Lacey and her boyfriend Steve. Alfred was already suffering from a liver disease called cirrhosis before the trial. At the time of the trial, doctors had given him 16 months to live. He would pass away 2 years later in 2017, alone and terminally ill. Dying 2 years after he began serving his sentence may be viewed by some as him escaping justice, especially after robbing his grandson Brian of a life with his mother. Alfred murdered his daughter and her boyfriend in cold blood in front of his grandson. Although he pleaded guilty, he never gave a reason for doing what he did, if there was a reason. Do you believe justice was served in this case? Or should he not have been offered a plea deal and given the death penalty instead? Share your thoughts in the comments. The lady you just saw in this clip, walking out of the store, is 35-year-old Crystal Rogers. This was the last glimpse of her. In 2015, Crystal Rogers, a 35-year-old mother of 5, mysteriously disappeared during the 4th of July weekend. Her family reported her missing on Sunday, July 5, 2015. And on the same day, her car was discovered abandoned on the side of the road of Bluegrass Parkway, near her home. The vehicle had a flat tire with her keys in the ignition, and her phone and purse had been left behind. Tragically, Crystal never returned, and despite having a few potential suspects, the case remained unsolved in the following months. The situation took a dark turn on November 19, 2016, a mere 16 months after Crystal's puzzling disappearance. During a hunting trip on their family property in Bardstown, Crystal's father, 54-year-old Tommy Ballard, was fatally shot. Interestingly, while the official investigation into Crystal's case had hit a standstill, Tommy had been actively pursuing his own inquiries into his daughter's fate. Did Tommy's quest for truth bring him too close to dangerous secrets, leading to his untimely demise? Or were these two incidents completely unrelated? And what truly happened to Crystal? Nestled in the heart of the Bluegrass State, Bardstown, Kentucky is a charming and historic gem that beautifully showcases the essence of Southern hospitality and rich American heritage. This quaint town, with its well-preserved 19th century architecture, exudes a sense of timelessness, offering visitors a glimpse into the past. Known as the bourbon capital of the world, Bardstown is a place where rolling green hills meet the famous Kentucky Bourbon Trail, making it a haven for whiskey enthusiasts. However, Bardstown is not just renowned for its bourbon. In 2012, this place was named the most beautiful small town in America in the Best of the Road competition, sponsored by USA Today. Regrettably, from 2013 onwards, this idyllic hamlet experienced a darker chapter, marred by a series of unsolved murders, casting a somber shadow over its once peaceful streets. Nonetheless, it was the supposed safest haven for Crystal Rogers and her family, who had been longtime residents of the area. Born on April 4, 1980 in Bardstown, Kentucky, Crystal Maria Ballard entered the world as the eldest child of Tommy and Sherry Ballard. Growing up with her brother Casey and sister Brooke, Crystal formed strong bonds with her family, particularly sharing a special connection with her father, Tommy. Described as a daddy's girl, she would turn to him whenever she faced challenges, knowing he would go to any lengths to support her. Crystal's character was marked by qualities of fun, care, happiness, humility, and beauty. Her friends attested to her amazing personality. depicting her as the ultimate friend, always willing to drop everything to help others without expecting anything in return. Known for her selflessness, Crystal was the type to give the shirt off her back if someone needed it, all while maintaining a straightforward and unapologetic honesty in her interactions.
Crystal is my oldest. Growing up, she made friends easy, but she was just always shy, very down-to-earth girl. Me and Crystal always was close. I was very lucky to have her for a daughter.
Is she a mama's girl?
She probably was, but she was a dad. She knew if she needed something, she'd go to her daddy.
Unfortunately, we do not know much about her background. However, what we do know is that she married a man named Keith Rogers when she was quite young. With Keith, Crystal had 3 daughters and a son. However, her marriage didn't stand the test of time, and after the birth of her 4th child, Crystal decided to part ways with her husband. Despite the separation, they shared a good relationship, and she retained his last name. Even though the two shared custody, the children mostly stayed with their mother. Crystal was fortunate to have a supportive family who did their best to help. However, she and her children required their own place to live. Following her separation from Keith in 2012, Crystal rented a house from Brooks Houck, an affluent construction businessman in Bardstown.
And then when Crystal moved into his rental house and got to know him, she said that she was going to go on a date with him.
Brooks received a warm welcome into the Ballard home, as someone they believed could be an ideal match for their daughter. Their relationship progressed rapidly, and soon they were living together with Crystal's 4 children. In 2013, their family expanded when Crystal gave birth to Brooks' son, Eli. Crystal was an exceptional mother, always prioritizing her kids. She was fiercely protective of her children and expressed displeasure if anyone else attempted to discipline them. Despite growing up with her strict mother, Sherry, Crystal was very easygoing and loving with all of her kids. It's not easy to raise 5 children, but Crystal never complained, even when juggling multiple jobs to make ends meet. Despite the size of their family, financial difficulties weren't a concern. The Houck family held prominence in the small community of Bardstown, owning multiple properties alongside their construction business. Brooks's brother, Nick Houck, worked in the Bardstown police, and in 2014, Brooks himself ran for the position of sheriff in Nelson County.
My name is Brooks Houck, and I look forward to becoming your next Nelson County Sheriff. I'm a proud native of Nelson County, and my family and I are excited about what the future holds for our community.
Despite appearances, Crystal's family sensed something amiss in Brooks. It had all the makings of a toxic relationship.
Crystal had 5 children. The baby, Eli, that she has with Brooks Houck, she was with that child 24 hours a day. Brooks was a good father to Eli, but her other children, he did not accept them like his own.
Brooks treated Crystal's other 4 children differently than Eli, showing less love and care toward them. Living together didn't translate into shared responsibilities for all the children. While they split grocery expenses, Brooks only contributed to Eli's needs, leaving Crystal to cover the cost for her other 4 children with her own money. While there can be some understanding when it comes to covering the expenses for 4 children, given that it's a considerable number, Brooks's approach struck Crystal's family as excessively extreme. Crystal and Brooks also had multiple disagreements, and he attempted to restrict her from spending time with friends and family. Though her family was worried about her situation, she was still willing to work on the relationship for the sake of her children. Independence Day festivities in America are synonymous with parades, fireworks, barbecues, concerts, and most importantly, family reunions. In Bardstown as well, the 4th of July occasion of 2015 was no exception, as residents indulged in the customary celebrations. However, it was a different story for Crystal's family. Little did they know that this festive occasion would mark the beginning of an agonizing ordeal for them, one that would endure for years. On July 3, 2015, Sherry Ballard received a text from Crystal's 14-year-old daughter, Kylie, inquiring if she had heard from Crystal.
She asked me if I talked to her mom. So I just picked up my phone, I texted Crystal, and I said, you need to text Callie, she's looking for you.
Typically, Crystal was prompt in her responses, so Sherry initially didn't think much of it and carried on with her day. However, her concern heightened later that night when she received another text from Kylie.
I got another text later on that night, and it was from Callie again and asked me if I'd heard from her mom again. I said, no, she never texted you, and she says no.
The growing unease set in, as it was highly unusual for Crystal to remain unresponsive for an extended period. Over the next 2 days, family and friends anxiously attempted to contact Crystal, but there was no response.
I started calling around just seeing if people had talked to my daughter, because she's not responding to me, and I knew that was different.
Unaware of the situation, on July 5, 2015, Crystal's sister Brooke contacted Sherry to share the same concern. However, she had more bad news. Brooke previously had a troubling conversation with Crystal's live-in boyfriend, Brooks Houck.
What happened when you called Brooks?
He said that he hadn't seen her since Friday.
According to Brooks, he hadn't seen Crystal since the early hours of Saturday, July 4, 2015. He said that when he went to bed that night, Crystal stayed up late playing games on her phone. However, when he woke up the next morning, she was no longer there. Although Brooks claimed not to have spoken to her, he calmly explained that he wasn't worried and assumed that Crystal spent the following Saturday, July 4th, at her cousin Sabrina's place. As soon as Sherry Ballard learned these details, she knew it was time to contact the police. On the evening of July 5th, 2015, Crystal's parents, Sherry and Tommy, and her brother Casey, all went to the Nelson County Sheriff's Office to file a missing persons report. Coincidentally, while they were on their way, they saw Brooks driving down the road, so Sherry went to talk to him.
And I got out of my car and walked up to the door, and he rolled the window down. I said, have you talked to Crystal? And he said, no. And I said, well, where is she? He said, I don't know. I said, did y'all have a fight? He said, no.
Brooks insisted there was no disagreement between them, leading Sherry to believe Crystal had no apparent reason to abruptly leave without notifying anyone. When Sherry noticed little Eli in the back seat of Brooks's car, alarm bells started ringing more.
If he had told me they got in a fight, I'd have been more apt to believe maybe she just got mad. But as soon as I saw that baby in the backseat, he never kept Eli.
Crystal had never separated from Eli, and when she couldn't be with him, she entrusted him with her sister. But she never left him alone with Brooks.
And I told Brooks, I said, I'm going to file a police report, a missing persons report. He looked at me like I could have been talking about anybody he didn't know, and he said, well, I think that's what you should do. He never offered to go with me.
Sensing something amiss, Sherry and the family wasted no time and promptly filed a missing persons report with the police. At first, the police had little to offer in terms of assistance, assuming the belief that Crystal, as an adult, might have become frustrated with her life, raising 5 children, and chosen to leave independently, intentionally avoiding contact until there was concrete evidence. Crystal's family, however, insisted that her children were her top priority, and there was no way she would have left them behind unless something dire had happened to her. Before long, a clue emerged. While still at the police station, the Ballards received a call from Crystal's ex-husband's son from his previous marriage, reporting that he had noticed Crystal's car on the side of the highway in Bardstown. To verify this information, Casey and Tommy promptly went to the location, and indeed Crystal's 2007 maroon Chevrolet Impala was discovered, abandoned near mile marker 14 of the Bluegrass Parkway. Immediately they sensed something was wrong. The car had a flat tire, yet the keys were left in the ignition. Crystal's purse and phone were inside, but there was no sign of her. At first glance, it seemed as though Crystal might have pulled over there due to the flat tire and exited. However, a crucial question arose. Why would she leave her belongings inside? Even if she needed assistance, she could have easily called her brother or her dad. Another peculiar detail caught their attention. The driver's seat had been slid back, and the back of the seat was upright. This was highly unusual because Crystal typically drove her car with the seat close to the steering wheel and the back of the seat lowered. This fueled their theory that she might not have been the one to drive the car back to that location. Acting on their suspicions, they once again contacted the police.
It definitely raised some suspicions about the fact that maybe we weren't just dealing with a missing persons report.
Concerned for Crystal's safety, law enforcement swiftly took action. They seized the car for inspection and dispatched search teams to scour the surrounding areas for any trace of Crystal, and media outreach was initiated to seek public assistance.
We're currently processing the vehicle. The air unit has searched along the Bluegrass Parkway. We're hoping that somebody saw something somewhere that'll get us going in the right direction.
In the close-knit community of Bardstown, the residents refused to remain passive in the face of Crystal's disappearance. Mobilizing the strength of their community ties, Crystal's family spearheaded their own search efforts, rallying the support of hundreds of volunteers, all united in their determination to find the mother of 5.
When everyone knew we were searching for my daughter, gosh, we had tons of people. I mean, tons of them. It was just unbelievable. If we asked for it, it's like they were there.
Despite the search operations from the law enforcement ceasing, Crystal's family took matters into their own hands, and in collaboration with local residents continued scouring the area for several days, with no luck. Tommy, Crystal's father, dedicated all his time to finding his daughter, initiating his investigation by gathering information and raising awareness about the case. But there was one person absent from the collective endeavor: Crystal's boyfriend, Brooks.
Did her boyfriend Brooks ever join in the search for her?
Never. Never. Not from day one. He never lifted a finger to do anything as far as those searches went.
Crystal's family voiced their suspicion about Brooks right from the outset. Not only was Brooks the last person known to have seen Crystal, but he also failed to provide any assistance in the search efforts or display genuine concern for her well-being. The family strongly believed that Brooks held more information than he was letting on. Taking their concerns public, Crystal's parents went to the media to express their suspicions. When her case was featured on the Nancy Grace Show, Brooks consented to an exclusive call.
Joining me right now, in addition to her parents, Tom and Sherry Ballard, her boyfriend that she lived with, they're in their 3-bedroom suburban home. Brooks Houck is with us. So, Brooks, you go to bed, and she's still playing games on her phone. The next morning, around 8 o'clock, you notice that she's missing. Did you report her missing?
No, ma'am.
Why?
That is a great question, and one that I definitely want to hit the public and the media. I was not in the least little bit alarmed in any way, shape, or form. We have had a stressed relationship at times, and one of the ways that Crystal has always chose to cope or to deal with that is by going to a young woman's name, Sabrina, that is her cousin, her dad's brother's daughter, whom she's very close to. And she spent the night there on several occasions.
When you say several, do you mean 1, 3, 20?
In the neighborhood of 4 to 6, something like that.
Tom and Sherry Ballard, were you aware of that? Do you know who Sabrina is?
Yes, ma'am.
That's my niece.
Okay. Did you know that she goes and spends the night over there when she's having an issue at home?
I've known probably one time.
Right. Okay, I want to go back to Brooks Houck, who was the last person to see her alive. Brooks, did you go on to the July the 4th get-together that day?
Yes, I did.
Even though you didn't know where she was?
Well, I was expecting, I'd put in a phone call that morning and then around lunch. And usually the maximum period of time that she has stayed gone has only been like a day to a day and a half at the most. And as a result of that, I thought that she would.
Did you try to call her?
Us. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, ma'am.
Did you try to call her during that time?
Not while I was there at the 4th. I called her prior to leaving to head in that direction. Yes, ma'am.
Some people have accused you of not being involved enough in the search efforts. What's your response?
That is a great question, and one I certainly appreciate you asking me. And that is all of my efforts in searching for her have been done behind the scenes with the Nelson County Sheriff's Office.
Like what?
Detective Snow, who's leading the investigation, and Jason Allison, who's a deputy there assisting him, along with the Kentucky State Police Agency Post Number 12.
Although Brooks defended himself, further police investigation painted a more concerning picture. Crystal's family disclosed unsettling details, revealing that Crystal had attempted to leave Brooks on multiple occasions in the past. However, fear held her back, as he possessed both wealth and influence, potentially enabling him to take away their child. Sherry recalled the last time she saw her daughter, on July 2, 2015, when Crystal had shared some alarming information. She revealed that she had learned from others that Brooks was renting his properties for cash, evading taxes, and had been dishonest about his tax payments.
She looked at me out of the blue, just out of the blue. We were not talking about that. And she's like, Mom, he thinks I'm an idiot. She said, but I have everything. She said, I have all of his rentals. I have his tax papers. I have everything. And she said, and I hid that. And to this day, Fallon, if I have one big, huge regret, it's because I did not ask her where.
Crystal further confided in Sherry about her plans to leave Brooks and her job assisting him with the rental properties. This revelation intensified the concerns already raised, but there was another layer to this unfolding mystery. Coincidentally, Crystal wasn't the sole woman in her family to go missing under mysterious circumstances. Her disappearance bore an eerie similarity to that of her aunt, who vanished nearly 5 decades ago. In January 1979, Crystal's 19-year-old aunt, Sherry Ballard Barnes, had mysteriously disappeared from Bardstown. Her vehicle was discovered submerged in the Ohio River a week after her disappearance, but investigators found no trace of the teenager. At the time, Sherry was 7.5 months pregnant. Tragically, Sherry's remains, along with those of her unborn child, were unearthed in a rural area 3 years later, in August 1983. Following this, Sherry's husband, Edsel Eddie Barnes, faced legal consequences in connection with her death. He was arrested and ultimately convicted in 1984 for hiring his friend George Weir to kill his estranged wife, so he would not have to pay child support. Eddie was eventually sentenced to life in prison. Disturbingly, Crystal had once found herself in an uncomfortable situation with Brooks when he inquired about the murder of Sherry Ballard Barnes. She later confided in her mother about how strange that conversation had been. Amidst the looming mystery surrounding Brooks Houck, investigators approached him seeking a detailed timeline of the day of Crystal's disappearance. His account largely echoed the story he had previously shared with Crystal's family, with some more details added. According to Brooks, on the afternoon of July 3, 2015, after filling up gas in his truck at a gas station, he met Crystal at home for dinner. Following the meal, he took Crystal and Eli to his family farmhouse. Detectives collected the surveillance footage, which seemed to align with his account. The truck was visible in the footage, although it couldn't be verified whether Crystal was present in the car. Brooks continued stating that after spending some time there, they returned home after midnight around 12:30 a.m. He claimed that when they got back, he went straight to bed, while Crystal remained awake, engrossed in playing games on her phone. However, when he woke up at 7 a.m. the next morning, Crystal and her car were gone, leaving Eli on the bed with him.
He seemed to be concerned that Crystal was missing?
No, not particularly. And he pretty much remained that way through most of the investigation.
So what did you make of that?
I found it odd.
The explanation appeared innocent enough, but seeing Brooks' lack of concern for the mother of his child, detectives felt that something wasn't adding up. To address these concerns, they invited Brooks to the Nelson County Sheriff's Office for further questioning. On July 8, 2015, Brooks willingly participated in a formal interrogation conducted by Nelson County Detective John Snow, who was leading the investigation. The detectives began the interrogation by revisiting questions about the relationship between Brooks and Crystal. Although Brooks acknowledged the challenges in their relationship, he maintained that they were working through them.
Had you and Crystal ever talked about breaking up?
I mean, obviously we have fought just like any other any other couple, but in the last several years, I mean, it's came up, but we've always found ourselves together moving forward. Mm-hmm. So that it's mentioned, but it's never happened, and we've always found ourselves together moving forward.
From there, the conversation shifted to the events of the night of July 3rd, where detectives began highlighting potential inconsistencies in Brooks's account.
And so do you remember, or did you go straight home on Friday night, or did y'all stop somewhere? Or, because I'm thinking if that's their normal 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, it might be dinner time. Did you stop and eat something, or did you go straight home?
We did not eat anything. I went straight home.
Okay. So you went straight home. So if we assume that he's correct in about 10 minutes after midnight, another 10 minutes to the house or so. So
I don't see it being that late. I mean, if that's what some of them things say, I guess you'd have to kind of go by that. But yeah, we didn't stop anywhere. We went straight home.
You could feasibly be home by 20 minutes after 12 if he passes you at 10 minutes after 12.
All right.
Which is a little off from what you originally told me, and you just said I still think it's a little off, but we'll go with what the camera says as opposed to memory, because sometimes memory's not that great.
All right.
And I checked the time on her camera, and I'm allowing for about a 9-minute gap there between what my watch says and what her camera says.
All right.
So which puts you leaving there by 11:55, which, again, 15 minutes to Caddyshack is not terribly bad in the rain. So it could have been that he passed you at 10 minutes after midnight, putting you home roughly 20 minutes after 12.
All right.
Fair enough?
Yes.
So you guys get home 20 minutes after 12, right there, thereabouts. I think you said you went to bed first. Do you remember about how long you were home before you went to bed?
I went to bed immediately.
So when you guys got in, you went and did your nightly routine, and you're going to bed. I think you told me that she stayed up, and Eli, did he stay up as well?
He was.
Okay. And where was she at?
If there's any activity going on in the house, he doesn't want to go to bed. Mm-hmm. If everybody turned the lights out and we just got in the bed, he's going to follow us in there and lay down with us. But if I go to bed and she stays up, he's not going to come in there to bed till all the lights are out and then she goes to bed. If I was doing something out there and she was in the bed, he's going to stay up with me until the lights are out until I go in there. Do you see what I'm...
Sure.
Yeah. So that's what
so he's going to stay up with Mom. So you go to bed, she stays up. What's she doing?
She's just on her phone playing, I don't know what game, but she normally plays a game.
Right.
Some kind. She's got several of them on there, but I don't know which one.
Okay. So she's on her phone, messing around, doing whatever, and you go to bed. Do you know what time Eli came to bed, or she put him into bed?
I don't know.
So what time do you think you got up on Saturday morning?
I probably woke up around, in between that time, like 6 or 7 o'clock, and then I left. I did my normal thing, changed my clothes, put my clothes on, and headed out. Shortly after that,
Mm-hmm.
Detective Snow focused on a specific detail during his questioning of Brooks. Brooks's phone log indicated that he received a call around midnight when he and Crystal were purportedly on their way home. The detectives were keen to know the identity of the caller, especially since the call lasted only 13 seconds. Brooks claimed he couldn't remember the caller, but offered to redial the number in the detective's presence. The call was traced to a man named Steve Lawson, an employee of Brooks Houck. Surprisingly, this call would become a pivotal piece of evidence, but not in the way anyone would have anticipated.
Saying that, but hey, I need your help while I got you on the phone here. Do you remember the other night you called me really, really late, and I forgot what you asked me. Can you? I guess we wasn't on the phone. I might have been tired. I know it was pretty late at night. Can you remember what you asked me or what you were after? I can't remember.
Yes, sir, I can. I called to ask you for them numbers for our house.
Oh, for a rental house.
Yes, sir,
And
I did.
and what did I forgot? What did I tell you?
You told me that you would call, what's her name, Katie or whatever, she handles all that.
Crystal.
Crystal.
Yeah.
And you said she handles all that, and that you would get back with me on it.
All right. Thank you so much, now.
Hey, if there's anything I can do, you give me a call.
Thank you. You have a good night now.
Yes, sir. God bless you.
Thank you.
In the call, Steve mentioned that Brooks needed to contact Crystal before providing information about the rental properties, as she was the one handling those affairs. This statement raised eyebrows, considering Brooks claimed Crystal was right beside him. Seeking clarification, Detective Snow delved deeper into the matter.
So that begs a question in my mind.
All right.
If she's in the truck next to you when he called, why would you need to call her about getting numbers for rental property?
Because being that late at night, we're headed to the house. You know, I just wouldn't. She normally's not going to deal with stuff that late. And I mean, I probably didn't even look at the phone to see who it was calling me. I'm sure I just answered it. You know.
But he said you told him that you'd need to call her.
All right.
Why would you need to call her? I mean, that's an odd phrase for someone who's sitting next to you in the truck. Do you understand? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying. But I mean, that's what if that right there is what I told him, that right there is what I told him. We wasn't on the phone that long, but normally I would just, she handles all that, and that's what I would do. She's not going to want to mess with that kind of stuff that late. I'm sure I'll probably try to answer the phone really quickly, so that it wouldn't, a lot of times after I get moving, Eli goes to sleep, you know. Sometimes he goes to sleep in the truck, and sometimes he doesn't. So if you want to call him, you got his number and everything. If you want to call him, you know, you can call him.
But before the interrogation could progress further, it was abruptly halted when Brooks received a call from his brother, Nick Hauk, a Bardstown police officer.
Well, okay. So I guess where I go from here, we're still getting video from different places, you know, that along that route.
Can I get this?
Sure.
Hello? No. I'm up here. I know that you didn't know. I'm up here in this interview with the Detective Snow. I've been up here a good little while. I'm filling out this statement here and everything. Are you telling me that's what I need to do? I know that. But the way that I look at it is, I'm innocent. I ain't done nothing wrong. What, you know? I know you told me innocent people have got jammed up, but if you're telling me to leave, I'll get up and leave. If you want me to. I know I'm going through a lot, but I'm trying to get this guy to help me. I don't think she's ran off with some other guy. I don't believe that. You can't make me think that. No. Yeah, so do I. I'll do exactly what you're telling me to do right now. You want me to get up and leave? Man, I don't think these people have got it vindictive just to skin me for no reason. Man, this is not their family. This is not. All right, thank you. He thinks y'all are gonna fuck is what he thinks.
I don't know who he is.
Nick, my brother.
If you want to go, you're free.
No, I know that, but I'm not. He just said just to keep sitting up here to give a statement, do an interview, whatever I got to do it. But he said, darn, just to keep just letting them just beat you to death over this right here. Just ask what you got to ask and let you know.
It was clear that Nick didn't want Brooks to continue speaking with the detectives. He instructed Brooks to leave, and Brooks promptly followed his brother's advice, leaving the interrogation unfinished. Since there was no solid proof against Brooks, he was free to go. Brooks had previously taken a polygraph, so the detectives were waiting on that result. but unfortunately it came back inconclusive. They knew that to solve this case, they had to dig deeper. Nick's call raised suspicions, prompting the detectives to scrutinize him. Therefore, the day after, Detective John Snow called Nick to ask if he would be willing to talk to them about Crystal's case.
Hello?
Nick. Yeah. Hey, it's John Snow over at the sheriff's office.
What's going on?
Oh, well, still trying to find Crystal.
Yeah.
Hey, do you mind, are you busy right now? Do you mind to come down and talk to me?
Man, I really don't have any information to give you. I mean, I think Brooks has been completely cooperative, and I had anything at all to give him, and I'd be the first one to be there.
So you're not going to come down here and talk to me?
That's correct.
Okay, then.
Despite Nick's denial, detectives kept an eye on him. They soon discovered an interesting piece of information. On July 3, 2015, Nick took his police cruiser to the family farm, where Crystal and Brooks allegedly went, which seemed suspicious. They decided to search the car with dogs, and surprisingly they got a hit on the cruiser's quarter panel, indicating the presence of bodily fluids. The vehicle was then taken to the KSP forensics lab for testing. The crime lab performed a luminol test on the trunk of his police cruiser, and a blanket found in the trunk tested positive for bodily fluids. Fluids which could include blood, saliva, sweat, or urine. The investigation took a compelling turn when it was revealed that just hours after Nick's call that ended Brooks's interview, a surveillance camera captured the two brothers, Nick and Brooks, separately driving to their family's farm, one after another. These findings raised serious questions about the potential involvement of the Houck brothers in Crystal's disappearance. Despite the increased scrutiny, Nick did not cooperate with the police. It was only after Bardstown Police Chief Rick McCubbin gave him a direct order that Nick sat down for an interview with the Nelson County detectives on July 15, 2015. The interview commenced on a seemingly lighter note, with detectives inquiring about Nick's knowledge of Crystal and Brooks's relationship and the frequency of their interactions.
I guess it's just kind of start from the beginning. You know what you're here to talk to us about, right?
Sure.
Okay. What is that?
Yeah, Crystal Rogers.
Okay. How do you know Crystal Rogers?
She's my brother's girlfriend.
Okay. And how long have you known her? How long have they been? I'm assuming. Did you know her before they started dating?
No, I didn't.
So how long have they been dating?
2 or 3 years maybe.
What interaction did you have with Crystal over the years?
Almost none.
Okay. I mean, did y'all? How often would you see your brother and her, or just her? Or?
I mean, I passed her on the street, and that's about it. I mean, my brother's got a bunch of rental properties and stuff, and I mean, I just don't see him. I see him on the road, and that's about it.
Okay.
He's so busy, we don't hang out much anymore.
Okay. And did y'all go to family functions together around Christmas and Thanksgiving, or?
If we've got time, we do. I mean, I've got about a dozen rental properties and work full time with the PD, and obviously got a family, and
sure.
I mean, we're just busy guys.
Sure, I understand that completely. I think we can sympathize with that.
Definitely.
So, in the 2 to 3 years they've been dating, how many times have you been around Crystal?
I've been down there to this house. I don't know, maybe half a dozen times or so.
The detectives proceeded to inquire whether Brooks had ever complained to Nick about Crystal, to which he responded in the negative. However, what raised eyebrows was Nick's claim that he couldn't recall whether Brooks informed him about Crystal's disappearance, or he learned it from somewhere else. This was unusual, as Nick, being a police officer, would typically have been the first person Brooks contacted when his girlfriend went missing. Despite the unusual nature of this claim, Nick insisted that his brother had no involvement in Crystal's disappearance. The interview then progressed to the point where the detectives asked questions about Nick's police cruiser.
Normally keep in your trunk. What's a normal duty setup? Like, I know ours looks like, evident store exploded in our trunk.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a cardboard box back there, and I mean, it's got, say there's flashlight, so we're obviously rechargeable flashlights in the car. There's many forms. There's a PBT, fire extinguisher. There's a department issued shotgun in the car. There's a bag up front with all kinds of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in those cars.
Do you generally keep all that stuff in your trunk all the time?
Some of it's in the trunk, some of it's up front in the seat. All the forms I use every day would be up front. I've got something that attaches to the passenger seat, and It's got all the forms, the accident report forms and all that stuff I use every day.
You take that car home with you, it's a take-home car,
Yes.
nobody else uses it unless
No.
something was to come up.
The only other person that's used that car is Tom Blair. It was issued to him first, and then it was passed down to me. But that's been a while back.
Yeah. How long has that been, you think?
That's been a couple of years.
Okay. So you've been the only one that's driven it in the last couple of years?
Oh, yeah.
Do y'all have stop sticks or anything, stingers?
I don't. I mean, there's some units do.
Okay.
So what you keep in the trunk is a cardboard box with some extra stuff in it, fire extinguisher.
Hats, just rain jackets.
Hats, rain jackets.
I mean, I could sit here and try to tell you every item. I probably didn't come up with half of them.
When they took your car, when the PD took your car from your house, what was in the trunk then?
Well, it's this morning grand jury came up with just all the stuff I just told you, but there was also one other thing I can remember that was there was just a regular blanket for moving. You know, where I moved from 104 Glenview Drive to where I'm at now, I took the blanket that was there and I just put it between furniture to keep it from marring up the finish on it. As it went down the road, I guess it was going to jingle around and.
In the trunk of your cruiser? Mm-hmm. You had furniture in the trunk?
No, I didn't. No, what I did, I got the blanket at the farm. I used it, and then I was going to take it back in a few days. I forgot about it, so it's sitting there in the trunk, you know. But no, I used my trailer and truck.
Observing Nick's reluctance to provide meaningful information, the detectives opted for a different approach. They inquired about Nick's recollection of visiting the farm on July 8th, to which he claimed not to remember. So they laid their cards on the table. Indisputable evidence in the form of surveillance footage.
Do you remember going out to the farm the evening of July the 8th?
I don't, but I very easily could have been out there.
That was incidentally the same night that your brother was. I think the same night your brother was interviewed by police.
Yeah, Wednesday, July 8th. You said there was cameras out there on that house.
Mm-hmm.
The cameras would have caught your car following Brooks
Wouldn't
on the way out to the.
Wouldn't surprise me.
But you said generally, you know, you would just go out to the farm and you would just meet him there. On this occasion, you all both went
Well,
together.
usually I don't meet him there. I mean, you know, he's just out there doing his own thing, and then I go out there and do my own thing. I mean.
Well, I mean, if that's what happened that night, it would have been just perfect timing that you were following right behind him, that you just so happened to meet him at the farm.
I see what you're saying.
Okay. So think back. Was there a time that you all both went out there at the same time for a specific reason?
Not that I recall.
So it just would have been coincidence that your car was following right behind his truck when it passed by that camera going to the farm?
Yeah, that's happened before.
Mm-hmm. So this night in particular, it would have been, you would have left after dark. Y'all came together and you would have left after dark. Do you remember that night?
Easily could have.
Okay. I mean, do you remember it?
No, really I don't.
Okay. Do you remember, were you all in the skid house? Were you at your mom's talking?
No, I mean, I can't even remember what he was doing. I mean, it was the 8th, it's the 15th, I don't.
I mean, do you remember being out there with him at the farm that evening?
I think I remember seeing him out there.
Okay, so you didn't. You're saying you didn't intentionally follow him out there, and did you all leave? Do you remember leaving together?
Mm-mm.
Why did he leave earlier? Or you leave earlier? Do you remember?
I don't have any idea.
Did you leave first or did he leave first?
I don't know.
But you remember, I mean, it's just been a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
Driving down Pascal Ballard, your car behind his truck. I mean, you got turned in the farm there. Do you remember? Can you go back and put that in your head, just driving down that road and you see your brother in front of you? What happened after that?
I can't.
The detectives found Nick's inability to recall the events of that day at the farmhouse with Brooks, even though it had only been a week, to be highly peculiar. They began to entertain the possibility that Nick might be intentionally withholding information. After a short break, they returned to the topic of Nick's police cruiser, this time disclosing information about the luminol test.
I guess let's kind of jump back to the cruiser here for a minute. Is there any reason that there'd be any blood in the trunk of your cruiser?
No reason at all.
So you don't transport any biological evidence on a regular basis? When's the last scene that you had somebody that was bleeding?
I had with my brother, and something like this going on, because this doesn't go on all the time. So I mean, we're going to call it like it is. Is it? Do you don't want to remember, or can you remember?
I can't remember.
How long has it been?
Oh, I mean, I'm sure it's maybe a wreck or something like that. That's been a long time ago.
Okay. I mean,
I can tell you, there's no blood in the trunk of my cruiser. I can guarantee you that.
Okay. Now, what about on anything that was in your trunk? Would there have been blood on anything that was in your trunk?
There's no way. Absolutely none.
Nick consistently denied the presence of blood in his vehicle. While the detectives lacked a direct link connecting Nick to Crystal's case, they remained unsatisfied with his responses. So they requested that he undergo a polygraph test, and, to their surprise, he agreed. When the results came back, Nick was brought back for another round of questioning. This interrogation started off with the detective revealing the polygraph test results to Nick, stating that he had not been 100% honest. As it turned out, he had failed the polygraph test. It was determined that he had lied in answering the questions about Crystal, particularly the one about whether or not he knew where she was.
Just so you know the facts. That's the results on your test. Exception indicated. 100%. And then greater than 99. What's greater than 99? 100, right? What are the questions? Do you know where Crystal is right now? Are you hiding any information about what happened to Crystal? See, you didn't tell me the truth on both of those questions. So, I mean, I'm telling the truth. I'm not going to sit here and make up a bunch of stuff and try to read techniques with you. We're past that. So the cat's out of the bag as far as your guilty knowledge of what happened here. And again, I'm not going to play the games with you as the detective doing all the read stuff and everything else. I'm telling you, it's two individuals who know the way investigations work, what the facts are. And the time is now, today, to start fixing this problem.
To elicit a reaction, the detectives presented a hypothetical scenario suggesting that Brooks might have killed Crystal, and Nick assisted in disposing of the body. In response, Nick vehemently denied any involvement, expressing strong objections.
I mean, do we need to take this any further?
I would like to take it to the truth. That's the whole reason we're here.
Is a test, though. I mean, you're talking crazy.
Well,
I mean, you're talking crazy.
Was that your rehearsed response to what was going to happen today? Because it sure sounds like it.
I don't know what it sounds like. I'm just telling
you.
Well,
I'm telling you what it is.
You're talking crazy.
What's crazy about it? Explain to me.
The accusations you're making.
Yeah, I'm saying you're not involved in this.
Absolutely not.
Well,
none.
You already told me that. That's why we did the polygraph, to find out. Well, now we both know.
I told you what now?
You told me before you had nothing to do with it. Right?
Yes.
Well, now we're past that, because I've already shown that you did have something to do with it.
I don't know what the test.
I just showed you.
Okay,
I just showed it to you.
But I'm telling you, I did have.
And I'm telling you, you're lying. I mean, I can't make it any. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I'm just telling you the truth.
That's what I'm doing to you. I'm telling you the truth.
No, you're not. We're past that. I've already shown you.
I've taken the polygraph. Do you have anything else for me? Because I mean, I'm not going to sit here and we're not going to go back and forth like this.
You do whatever you want to do. I said I'm here.
I mean, I want to cooperate with you. I mean, I'm not here.
Tell me what happened. Tell me what you know.
I don't know anything.
We're past that. You've already shown me that you do.
I know nothing.
Despite maintaining that he had no information about Crystal's location and was not involved in her disappearance, Nick's demeanor during this interview was noticeably agitated, a stark difference from his calm and composed behavior in the initial interview. Since polygraph tests are not admissible as evidence in court, the detectives had to release Nick despite their strong suspicions against him. Just months after this incident, on October 16, 2015, Bardstown Mayor John Royalty, Police Chief Rick McCubbin, and City Attorney Tim Butler held a press conference, announcing that Nick Houck was fired for interfering with an ongoing investigation into Crystal Rogers' disappearance. However, he was not named a suspect in that case.
Earlier today, he issued a final order, which I believe you all have a copy of, and that order terminates Officer Houck from the Bardstown Police Department.
Chief McCubbin, you're probably disappointed in the actions by Mr. Houck. Can you talk about your reaction?
Well, yeah, disappointed, obviously. And it's certainly not a happy day for any of us involved at all. that we're even having to address this. But I think in the order, I hope it addresses a lot of my feelings, what I looked at. What we don't have is I know many of you have asked, the charging documents that I submitted to the mayor, Officer Houck, which now that it's adjudicated or public record. And I lined out a lot of stuff in that would probably, address that. This is a case really where it's as much for what a police officer didn't do as much as what he did do, if that makes sense. I looked at it from my perspective that
did something to hinder the investigation, whereas in other respects he didn't cooperate with the investigation, and that's laid out in that statement. But as far as I know, in terms of the sin of commission, where he took some sort of action, I think that would be the only one that I'm aware of.
Yeah, it's and he really, I guess if you think about it, he injected himself into this. He made that call. He was not necessarily on the radar. But by him making that call, he therefore entered into the entire investigation. That, yes, of course, that was the first and really only forward-moving thing that he did. The rest of it was more of in a passive way. His lack of candor stood out to me as much as anything. And like I said, it's a lot of what he didn't do as much as what he did do.
Later on that same day, Brooks Houck was officially designated as a suspect in the investigation into Crystal's disappearance by the Nelson County detectives. Moreover, they stated that they considered it not merely a case of disappearance, but rather one of homicide, operating on the presumption that Crystal had already met an unfortunate fate. Unfortunately, despite being identified as the primary suspect, investigators struggled to unearth conclusive evidence directly linking him to the case. Consequently, he remained at large, evading both incarceration and media scrutiny. Things, however, were different for the Ballard family. Not only were Crystal's parents and other loved ones appearing on locally and nationally syndicated television programs, but they were also arranging searches through the region, especially surrounding the location where Crystal's vehicle had been found. Tommy, Crystal's father, went to great lengths to raise awareness about Crystal's disappearance by orchestrating the placement of numerous signs across Bardstown. Virtually every street corner in the town featured a poster or flyer adorned with Crystal's face and name. The entire town was saturated with reminders of the missing woman, making it impossible to travel from one part of the town to another without encountering her story. Tommy even had the image and information about her painted on the pickup truck, transforming it into a moving billboard. He spared no expense in his relentless pursuit for answers. He devoted their family savings to deploying cadaver dogs and hiring private investigators. Additionally, rewards were announced as an incentive for anyone with potential leads to come forward. Sadly, none of these efforts yielded any tangible leads. For the next several months, Tommy persisted in maintaining hope for his missing daughter. Despite the lack of significant progress, he tirelessly organized one search after another, determined to broaden their scope, even if it meant venturing beyond state borders. Actively taking charge, he frequently spearheaded local search missions in rural outskirts surrounding Bardstown, mobilizing dozens, if not hundreds of volunteers at a time. Tommy documented every detail that he deemed relevant, whether it be a peculiar object discovered during searches or local rumors circulating in town. It became apparent that he was conducting his own independent investigation, turning his quest for his missing daughter into a full-time commitment.
What was it like to watch your brother in action?
He was determined that he was going to find his daughter. He was not going to give up. I mean, he was 110% determined.
There was a lot of disappointment along the way. Day after day went by, month after month, no answers. What drove him?
The love for his family. My husband was a very good father. He would do anything for his kids.
In a significant turn of events, toward the end of the year, a major development unfolded in the investigation. In December 2015, an announcement was made that the first person had been arrested in connection to the disappearance of Crystal Rogers. The individual in question was 52-year-old Danny Singleton, a longtime employee of Brooks Houck, often regarded as his right-hand man. Singleton was known to have a friendly relationship with Crystal, having worked alongside her. On December 16, 2015, Singleton was arrested on 38 counts of perjury, stemming from his grand jury testimony earlier that year. Detectives alleged that he had repeatedly lied under oath. Ultimately, he pleaded guilty to lesser counts of false swearing the following year, serving approximately 8 months in jail. He completed the rest of his sentence on probation. Whether he cooperated with investigators or provided any evidence against his friend and employer, Brooks Houck, remain undisclosed. Entering 2016, the investigation saw another significant breakthrough. A white Buick emerged as a crucial piece of evidence when authorities received a tip about a suspicious car, potentially linked to the case. Witnesses reportedly observed the vehicle, a white Buick, parked at the Houck farm on the night Crystal disappeared. This vehicle was identified as belonging to the Houck brothers' grandmother, Anna Whitesides. When the police sought to execute a search warrant to seize the vehicle, Whitesides disclosed that she owned a white Buick, but had sold it to a dealership in Louisville just weeks after Rogers went missing. Subsequently, authorities issued a subpoena for the 82-year-old woman to testify before a grand jury, seeking an explanation for why she disposed of the car immediately after Crystal's disappearance.
When officers tried to execute a warrant to seize the car, however, Whitesides told them she had recently sold the 16-year-old car to a dealership in Louisville. The Commonwealth may very well believe that Whitesides' vehicle was used to dispose of a body and that the vehicle was sold in an attempt to prevent the Commonwealth from obtaining any evidence from it.
Whitesides, however, refused to testify before a grand jury. Her attorney, Jason Floyd, contended that her statement to the police, along with information from the car buyer, sufficed. Subsequently, a judge decided to maintain confidentiality regarding all future proceedings involving Whitesides. In August 2016, Kentucky State Police conducted multiple searches on Whitesides' properties, hoping to uncover any clues, but unfortunately, the searches yielded no results. Amidst these developments, Tommy Ballard appeared to grow somewhat paranoid. In 2016, he became a fervent advocate for safety, caution, and routine. He urged family members to install security cameras at their homes and regularly carry firearms. Aside from promoting good habits like checking locks, he seemed to be experiencing heightened stress and anxiety. Tommy went so far as to install a dash cam in his truck, recording his movements on a regular basis. In the fall of 2016, Tommy confided in his wife, Sherry, that he was certain he was being followed. The identity of the pursuer remained unclear, but to those close to Tommy, it appeared that he harbored a fear of something terrible happening to him or his loved ones as the holiday season approached. Little did anyone anticipate that Tommy's apprehensions would tragically materialize, casting their family into yet another unfortunate tragedy. On Saturday, November 19, 2016, roughly a year and a half after Crystal went missing, Tommy Ballard headed out for a hunting trip with Crystal's 12-year-old son, Trenton. It was the start of deer hunting season, and Tommy, being a seasoned hunter who was familiar with the local rules and regulations, had eagerly anticipated this occasion for several weeks. Crystal's brother, Casey, was also supposed to tag along with his son, Brandon.
Dad's on the farm we hunt on for 10, 12 years maybe. And we've always hunted on it every year. That morning, my son Brennan went with me. Crystal's son, Trenton, went with Dad. Dad and Trip went on towards the back of the farm, and I was hunting in front of the farm.
The two were hunting in a field off the Bluegrass Parkway, situated on private property owned by the Ballards. It was a quiet and secluded spot, one of Tommy's favorite places. During this particular early morning hunting trip, the two briefly separated. Tommy's grandson headed back to the truck they arrived in, likely to retrieve something they had forgotten. Meanwhile, Tommy stood in the field they had just occupied, awaiting his grandson's return. It was at this moment that a gunshot echoed through the air. Casey, who was in a different area of the property far away, heard the shot from multiple fields away.
I pulled up to the front of our farm there and into the edge of the woods, and it was still dark, and I heard a gunshot.
Tommy called out to his grandson, and once they both reached him, Tommy mentioned that he had been struck by something. He instructed Trenton to seek assistance, and the 11-year-old hurriedly went to summon help by contacting family members and alerting authorities to the scene.
My phone rings, and when I picked up the phone and answered it, it was Trenton. I just heard him say, Mama, Papa's been shot.
My phone started ringing. It was Trenton on the phone, and he was screaming. And I told him, I was like, just stay right there, Trenton. I said, I'm on my way.
I was panicking, you know, I was trying to throw my clothes on and get ready, and I went in the bathroom. I told Trenton, I said, and I ran over and I knelt down to Tommy, and I shook him. And I just begged him to get up.
By the time emergency services arrived, it was already too late to save Tommy Ballard. He succumbed to the gunshot wound just moments later, having been struck once in the center of his torso, with the bullet exiting through his back. While authorities were uncertain whether it was a hunting accident or a targeted killing, the Ballard family was convinced it was the latter.
When my husband was shot, I knew in my heart it was no accident.
I feel like Tommy started putting himself out there too much. It's like the more determined he became, the braver he became.
I think someone wanted my husband out of the way. I think they knew he was never going to quit pushing to find my daughter. And that's why I think my husband's not here today.
Tommy's death weighed heavily on the Ballard family, particularly on Sherry, who not only lost her husband, but also lost her high school sweetheart, a man with whom she had spent nearly 4 decades.
It's very, very hard for me to continue to look for Crystal without him.
Without Tommy, Sherry's quest for justice became incredibly challenging. Alongside that, she had to contend with a protracted legal battle against Brooks. Throughout this time, Sherry cared for Crystal's 4 older children, but she lost the custody battle for Eli, who remained with his father, Brooks. Although she initially had visitation rights, they were later revoked. Brooks' family accused Sherry of manipulating Eli, claiming the boy asked many questions about his father and mother after visits with his grandmother. In response, Sherry maintained her belief that Brooks was involved in Crystal's death, but asserted that she would never act against Eli's best interest. Despite requesting supervised visits, her pleas were denied. In 2017, Crystal's case was handed over to the Kentucky State Police, but progress remained slow. However, just when it seemed all hope was lost, a helping hand emerged. Oxygen Media decided to produce a documentary series on Crystal Rogers' disappearance. The show's host, Emmy-nominated reporter Stephanie Bauer, reached out to Crystal's family and began delving into the investigation.
My name is Stephanie Bauer. I've been a reporter for over a decade and covered notorious crimes across the country. I've come to Bardstown, Kentucky to see if I can find out what happened to Crystal Rogers.
She also enlisted the expertise of veteran homicide detective Dwayne Stanton, who boasts a wealth of experience, having worked on celebrity cases and over 750 homicide investigations. Together, they embarked on a journey to unravel the mystery of Crystal's disappearance. In their discussions with the Ballard family, they discovered that authorities had returned Crystal's car after processing it. Since then, the car had been preserved in the same condition within a storage unit. In their quest for evidence, Stephanie and Detective Dwayne saw assistance from forensics reconstruction specialist Joey Stidham to reprocess the abandoned car. Joey, a former Kentucky State Trooper, informed them that the investigative resources in Kentucky were severely limited.
Stephanie, how are you?
Nice to see you. Wayne Stanton, MPD, Washington, D.C.
Good to meet you.
Retired. Thank you, sir. Joey Stidham is a former Kentucky State Police officer, but he now has his own company that specializes in forensic investigations.
He revealed that the Kentucky State Police Crime Lab typically only accepts 10 pieces of evidence for testing in murder cases. The team pondered whether this limitation might have affected the investigation into Crystal's disappearance. After processing the car, numerous bags filled with potential evidence were collected. Before conducting the forensic search, a cadaver dog checked the Impala for the possible presence of human remains and began barking. The dog, after sniffing around the car, sat in front of the open trunk and began barking, even jumping inside the trunk, an unusual behavior according to her owner. Following the dog's indication, a luminol test on the trunk revealed a significant stain. Despite turning out not to be blood, the discovery underscored the importance of examining all evidence. Unfortunately, other items collected from the car did not provide any significant evidence. Failing to retrieve evidence from the vehicle, Stephanie and Dwayne turned their attention to Tommy's evidence box, which contained items collected over the 16 months of investigation. Surveillance footage, notes, documents, and more. Countless hours of work were encapsulated in this box.
Tommy kept his entire investigation inside of that box. Videotape, locations, addresses, communication, documented, categorized, inventory. I've been doing this 40 years now. I've never seen anything like it.
While sifting through the boxes, they uncovered a detail that had not been publicly disclosed. In Walmart surveillance footage from July 3, 2015, Crystal was observed shopping with Eli around 4:30 p.m. This marked the final time Crystal was captured on camera. However, according to a witness account, Crystal was seen returning home at approximately 5 p.m. This piece of information highlighted a significant gap in Crystal's movements.
Kind of take a look at this.
So we found this surveillance footage in Tommy's box. It's of Walmart on July 3rd. So this is the last footage of Crystal in person. It's the last time she was seen for a fact on camera.
Could be the last hours of her life. 4:36 p.m.
Okay, so actually this note that Tommy's written says, a witness saw Crystal bringing bags into the house at around 5 p.m.
Physically saw Crystal.
We know at 5 o'clock she's not missing yet.
So what we know for sure is Crystal was last seen on camera, undeniable, at Walmart around 4:30.
The docuseries also delved into the perceived meticulous planning behind Tommy Ballard's murder, drawing parallels with another unsolved murder in Bardstown concerning the level of planning and execution. Bardstown police officer Jason Ellis was killed on May 25, 2013, just before 3 a.m., as he stopped at the Bluegrass Parkway exit to clear debris from the roadway. This occurred on his way home after completing an overnight shift. Ellis was shot and killed upon exiting his car. Despite authorities labeling it as a premeditated murder, the case remains unsolved to this day. Intriguingly, some Bardstown residents speculate that it could be an inside job, carried out by someone intimately familiar with the town, echoing similarities to Tommy's case. However, it has not been officially proven that these two cases are connected in any way. While the Oxygen documentary explored significant aspects of the case and garnered considerable media attention, it did not lead to the resolution of the case. Despite enduring the worst pain that a mother and wife can experience, Sherry Ballard exhibited remarkable strength and courage. As the years passed, even without significant progress in Crystal's case, Sherry refused to give up her battle for justice. The family continued to put up flyers featuring Crystal's face, and every year on the anniversary of her disappearance, they worked tirelessly to spread awareness, talking to the media to keep Crystal's story alive in people's minds. However, as the anniversary of Crystal's disappearance in 2017 approached, a peculiar incident occurred. Signs related to the disappearance of Crystal Rogers were mysteriously taken down throughout Bardstown and stolen. Authorities were puzzled by this act, questioning who could have had an interest in such a low-life act. It didn't take long for the Bardstown police to find the responsible individual. In late July 2017, Crystal Maupin, a Bardstown resident, was arrested on the accusation of stealing signs asking for information in Crystal Rogers' disappearance. The connection was not just in their same first names. In fact, Maupin was dating Brooks Hauk. Maupin eventually received a 60-day suspended sentence with a 2-year conditional discharge. That means Maupin would be on probation for 2 years, but she would serve 60 days in jail if she violated the terms. In July 2018, Brooks Hauk was once again thrust into the limelight when he was charged with unrelated theft charges.
WDRB's Fallon Glick explains why he was in court today.
Brooks Hauk was in court Thursday afternoon after being arraigned on felony theft charges after stealing from Lowe's. Brooks Hauk walked into the Nelson County Justice Center with his head held.
He pleaded not guilty to the charges and was later acquitted in a jury trial in Nelson County. Despite all these legal troubles, Brooks Hauk always stayed out of trouble when it came to Crystal's case. He was the only official suspect in his girlfriend's disappearance. Yet, due to insufficient evidence, he continued to live his life outside. Crystal's family was worried whether there would ever be any breakthrough in the case. Sherry's persistence paid off in 2020 when the FBI took over the case. And immediately there was a new surge of searches. In August 2020, more than 150 federal agents served search warrants at 3 sites owned by Hauk and his family members. In August 2021, agents searched a subdivision where Hauk owns properties. They reportedly used a cadaver dog during the search, and investigators were seen using a jackhammer on the driveway of a home. The driveway was dug up, and large chunks of it were hauled out of the neighborhood in construction trucks. On September 7, 2021, the FBI announced that the search in Bardstown had concluded, with several items of interest sent to a lab in Virginia for testing. In the same month, a Nelson County grand jury indicted Joseph Lawson, a 32-year-old local man, on charges of conspiracy to commit murder and complicity in tampering with physical evidence. The indictment did not identify any victim, but the dates given for the murder corresponded to Crystal's disappearance. Crystal's relatives confirmed that they had been notified of the indictment prior to it being made public. On October 5, 2023, a significant breakthrough occurred in the case that Crystal's family had been waiting for over 8 long years. Her former boyfriend, Brooks Hauk, was arraigned in Nelson Circuit Court on charges of murder and tampering with physical evidence in connection with Crystal's death. Despite her remains never being found, authorities believe she was long dead. The prosecutor revealed that the investigators had recovered a gun sold by Hauk's brother under a fake name, a firearm detectives believe could be a match for the murder weapon in the killing of Roger's father, Tommy Ballard. Due to the active nature of this case, detectives have refrained from providing additional details. Currently, Brooks Hauk is being held on a $10 million bond at the Hardin County Detention Center in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. After Brooks Hauk's arrest, Sherry refrained from making a public comment in the media, adhering to the prosecutor's advice. However, she did share her overwhelming feelings in a Facebook post. Despite this case moving toward justice nearly a decade later, Sherry faces a challenging road ahead. While she may hold no doubt about Brooks's involvement in her mind, the legal principle of innocent until proven guilty prevails. The hope is that she can obtain justice for both her daughter and her husband, initiating a process of healing for herself and the remaining family. Sherry is currently entangled in a prolonged custody battle with the Hauk family for Eli, who recently turned 10. The heartbreaking reality is that regardless of the legal outcome, Eli confronts the daunting prospect of growing up without the presence of his mother and potentially his father if he is convicted. This story is exceptionally chilling, with its multitude of aspects and angles each shrouded in secrecy. What are your theories about Crystal's fate? Do you believe Brooks played a role in her disappearance, potentially leading to a tragic end?
You want to say something to your kids?
Mama, sorry.
Who raising your kids?
Me and my mom and dad.
You ain't raising shit. You on here in your back smoking crack. You ain't going home tomorrow. I'm going to keep you about a week.
Later, he would establish his total dominance.
Say it clear.
You want the master?
The video you witnessed is not from a movie or scripted. These are real people, victims who fell prey to a monster, 36-year-old Maury Travis. His crimes were so horrific that the police chief in the area ordered psychological counseling for anyone who had even watched the footage of his victims. He would lure victims into his basement, where he would subject them to unimaginable torture and bizarre rituals. What drove Maury Travis to commit such horrific crimes? How did he lure his victims into his basement without raising suspicion? The central character of today's story, Maury Travis, was born on October 25, 1965. He was known by the nickname Toby and lived with his mother Sandra Travis and his father Michael V. Travis in Carr Square, a public housing complex in St. Louis, Missouri. They later bought a house at 1001 Ford Avenue in Ferguson in April 1976. Maury Travis's childhood seemed relatively ordinary. While he was undeniably introverted and reserved, he was also known for his exceptional politeness and respect. Adults who interacted with him perceived him as someone who was highly mindful of etiquette and social norms. One teacher distinctly called Maury as an unusually quiet teenager, who even took the initiative to mow his neighbor's lawn. His demeanor at school was unremarkable, and those who knew him, including teachers, parents, and peers, never suspected him of being capable of violence. When police later interviewed individuals who attended school with Maury or lived near him, many of them didn't even recognize who he was. He didn't leave a memorable impression. In all of his childhood that is known to us, the separation of his parents was the only potential trauma that he may have experienced. He graduated from McClure High School in 1985 and served 2 years as an Army reservist. Following that, he worked as a medical and dental assistant. Additionally, he managed to secure employment locally with haulage companies and even volunteered at a local nursing home. Maury Travis's enrollment in Morris Brown College in 1986 at the age of 22 seemed like a positive step forward. However, it was also in this private institute in Atlanta where he encountered and formed a relationship with cocaine, sending his life into a downward spiral. His addiction quickly escalated to a severe level, costing him $300 a day. Maury's plunge into criminal activities to support his habit swiftly brought him to the attention of law enforcement the following year. Up until that point, he had a clean record, making his sudden shift into illegal behavior quite unexpected. Rather than a gradual escalation, his actions took a surprising and abrupt turn from his prior conduct. In March 1988, during his college spring break, Maury engaged in a string of robberies that raised eyebrows. To everyone's surprise, he targeted 5 shoe stores in St. Louis within 8 days. What added an unusual twist to these crimes was his choice of weapon. Instead of a loaded firearm, he used a plastic toy gun to instill fear. This abrupt shift into criminal behavior was truly unexpected, especially given his clean record prior to these incidents. This is where Maury Travis took a sharp turn into criminal activity. The armed robberies he committed resulted in his initial capture. Witnesses provided the police with details about his car, leading to his arrest. The detective handling the case was taken aback, as Maury didn't fit the typical image of a criminal. Upon being apprehended, Maury claimed to have hazy memories of the crimes, attributing it to drug influence. While awaiting sentencing, he underwent a drug rehabilitation program and claimed to have successfully overcome his addiction. Despite these efforts and his clean record before this, the court had taken his actions into account during proceedings. Character references poured in support of Maury, including one from a congressman and U.S. representative. These testimonials highlighted his rehabilitation efforts, asserting that his criminal behavior was an aberration in his character. Despite this acknowledgement, Maury received a 15-year prison sentence on July 5, 1989, at the age of 23. This marked the start of his time behind bars for his criminal actions. From the outset, Maury realized that his time in prison wouldn't be easy. He attested to the inhospitable conditions, citing frequent assaults and an abundance of drugs that posed a significant threat to his rehabilitation. Having successfully addressed his dependency issues, he found himself surrounded by drugs in this challenging environment. In a desperate plea to the judge, Maury wrote a letter, urging him to reconsider his sentence, pouring his heart out in the hope of a more lenient outcome.
In his plea to the judge, Maury wrote on how he was constantly thinking of taking his own life due to the horrible conditions he is living in. He ended by asking the judge to give him another chance in society. Maury was granted parole in 1994, serving only 5 years and 3 months of his sentence at the Farmington Correctional Center. His early release was primarily attributed to his exemplary behavior. Although he had 13 conduct violations, they were minor infractions. Upon his release, he moved into a duplex where neighbors regarded him as an excellent resident who didn't cause any disturbances. After serving time initially from March 1989 through June 1994, Maury faced additional prison stays due to drug-related charges from February 1998 to January 1999 due to repeatedly violating his parole. Once outside prison, he worked in various restaurants, keeping to himself mostly. He also displayed an unusual fixation for his 2000 black Mitsubishi Eclipse, spending considerable time cleaning and maintaining it. Although neighbors and classmates of Maury didn't have any suspicious information about him, one of his former girlfriends had something different to say.
A boyfriend that I grew to love and wanted to marry and have his children. He told me he would really hurt me. He knew, "You don't know me, girl."
When he said, "You don't know me," did you think maybe I don't know him?
I knew to get the hell out of there. He was a very beautiful person. He was supportive, and he helped me build my self-esteem back up.
In March of 2001, Maury's girlfriend left him, and this was when bodies of women began to turn up around town. Between March 2001 and May 2002, Maury would actively pick up sex workers along the extended stretch of Broadway known as the Stroll, north of St. Louis. In fact, 4 suspected victims of Maury were later discovered in this area. It gained notoriety for its numerous crack houses and the availability of such workers. Maury would pick them up and then bring them back to his home in Ferguson. Once there, he would keep some of these women for days, subjecting them to his whims. However, it wasn't solely for his personal satisfaction. He recorded the horrifying events taking place in the basement. Videotapes documenting these acts were later discovered, concealed within a wall. Some of the video clips showed Maury engaging in consensual but rough roleplay involving bondage with women. There were also instances when he was seen using drugs, yet he would let them go unharmed. However, in other footage, Maury could be seen indulging in much darker activities, from keeping women hostage for days in his dungeon to strangling them to death. Law enforcement initially struggled to comprehend why he chose to spare certain women while murdering others. One hypothesis suggests that the tipping point might have been when he discovered that a particular sex worker had children. It appeared that this discovery triggered a violent rage in him, since they chose drugs over their children. Although it's not confirmed, that's the association they've drawn.
You want to say something to your kids?
Mama, sorry.
Who raising your kids?
Me and my mom and dad.
You ain't raising shit. You on here in your back smoking crack. You ain't going home tomorrow. I'm going to keep you about a week.
Later, he would establish his total dominance.
Say it clear.
You are the master.
He also made them perform the most unbelievable rituals. Maury would get them to dance in white clothes, then at times he'd get them to wear sunglasses where the lenses were completely blacked out, so they couldn't see. By doing this, he was taking power away from them completely. He would then restrain their legs with a rope and handcuff them. At times, he'd even cover their eyes with duct tape. In the footage that they found, they saw these women shackled to a wooden post with Maury verbally taunting them. He would tell them what was going to happen, or they needed to berate them as well. At times, he'd get angry because he'd find out that these women had children. He also used to criticize them, expressing aggression and violence due to their choice of drugs over their kids.
I can't hear you what you're saying. Say it clear.
You are the master that pleases me to serve you. You are the master that pleases me to serve you.
Stop for
You are the master that pleases me to serve you.
Now you sit your ass down like I said.
In some of the earliest footage, Maury is actually seen standing over a kneeling naked woman, heavily bound with a rope and handcuffed. Then he suddenly grabs the belt, snaps it tightly around her neck, and strangles her until she's unconscious and she's limp. He may even have broken her neck. He then just leaves her body face down on the floor. It's truly horrifying to think that Maury Travis was able to carry out such horrific crimes without raising suspicion. One thing we know is Maury Travis's ability to blend into the background made him a master of disguise. His unassuming nature allowed him to operate unnoticed, making him the last person anyone would suspect of such heinous crimes. On July 31, 2000, the discovery of the first known victim, Mary Shields, 61, in East St. Louis, Illinois, began a haunting pattern. In the months that followed, the tragedies escalated. On March 24, 2001, the body of Cassandra F. Walker, 19, was found in Washington Park, Illinois. Alyssa Greenwade, a 34-year-old caught in a seemingly hopeless cycle of addiction, was discovered deceased on April 1, 2001, in Washington Park, Illinois. Her body showed signs of strangulation, with ligature marks found on her wrist and ankles. Near her body, authorities found a tire impression, identified as a Bridgestone Potenza tire, which was photographed for further analysis. Not long after, on May 15, 2001, Teresa Wilson, 36, was discovered in West Alton, Missouri. May 30, 2001, marked the discovery of Betty James, 46, in St. Louis, with an evident tire impression distinct from earlier scenes. The St. Louis Police Department strongly believed that all these murders were the work of the same individual, as the crimes were executed in a similar manner. By June 29, 2001, Verona Thompson, 36, was found in West Alton, Missouri. Following this, on August 25, 2001, Yvonne Cruz, 50, was discovered in East St. Louis, Illinois. The haunting silence after October 8, 2001, when Brenda Beasley, aged 33, was found dead in East St. Louis, Illinois, raised speculation. Authorities speculated three possible scenarios. Either the perpetrator was in custody, had passed away, or had relocated from the area. However, the unsettling quiet broke as the year changed. The cycle resumed, claiming 4 more lives. The first unidentified victim was found on January 30, 2002. Another unidentified victim was found near Muscatoa, Illinois, on March 11, 2002. The next unidentified victim was discovered in Columbia, Illinois, on March 28, 2002. And the final unidentified victim was reported in West Alton, Missouri, on May 25, 2002. Each day marked a sorrowful moment, revealing a frightening pattern. What ultimately led to uncovering the killer will stun you like never before. In an attempt to bring attention to one of the victims and maintain public interest in the investigation, Bill Smith penned an article. This was about Teresa Wilson, a victim, and her life struggles leading up to her unfortunate demise. He named the killer the Streetwalker Strangler. The article was published in the paper's May 19, 2002 issue.
What I think I ended up doing was humanizing this woman who, in a way, had kind of dehumanized her own life by getting involved in prostitution and drug activities.
Less than a week later, Smith received a letter at his desk. While it's not uncommon for media personnel to receive letters or correspondence, this letter had an unusual return address on the envelope. I Thraldom, 325. 331 Lafayette Street, New York, New York, 10012. The letter bore a St. Louis postmark, indicating it had been mailed locally. The zip code 10012 encompasses portions of Manhattan's Soho, NoHo, Nolita, and Greenwich Village neighborhoods. The letter bore a St. Louis postmark, indicating it had been mailed locally. However, the I Thraldom address is fictional. So why would someone use that term for an address? According to Merriam-Webster, thraldom refers to the state of being an enslaved person. It also served as the name of a bondage website. The letter was typed using what appeared to be Lucida handwriting font in red ink, with minimal punctuation. Smith initially believed it was a prank. He quickly realized the letter was no joke, and that a person claiming to be the Streetwalker Strangler was contacting him. The letter read, Dear Bill, nice sob story about Teresa Wilson. Write one about Greenwade, write a good one, and I'll tell you where many others are. to prove I'm real. Here's directions to number 17. Search in a 50-yard radius from the X. Put the story in the Sunday paper like the last. The letter Bill received included a map of West Alton, marked with an X, indicating the location of a body. The sender offered to reveal the locations of additional victims and, as evidence of their identity, provided directions to number 17, accompanied by a typed internet-generated map. After finding a skeleton at the marked spot, authorities focused on the map, which appeared to have been generated using an internet mapping service. They found a possible match on Expedia.com, according to an affidavit by FBI agent Melanie Jimenez. On May 30, 2002, Expedia informed Jimenez that Microsoft, based in Redmond, Washington, provided the data for its map site. The FBI requested records of any maps of West Alton made between May 18, 2002, the date of the newspaper story that prompted the letter, and May 21, 2002, the postmark on the envelope. It took 4 days to receive a response. On June 3, 2002, Microsoft reported that only one computer had accessed the map during the specified time period. The company further revealed that on May 20th, the computer had zoomed in on the map of the West Alton, Missouri area approximately 10 times in chronological order, eventually generating a map that matched the one sent to the Post-Dispatch. However, Microsoft could not provide a name, only an IP address, a meaningless string of numbers to most people, 65.227.106.78. To translate the IP number into a name, the FBI turned to WorldCom Incorporated, which provided local telephone numbers to connect internet services to their dial-up customers. WorldCom assigns a temporary IP address to each customer for each internet session. The challenge was not just to identify who used 65.227.106.78, but also to determine who used it at the specific time in question. The next day, on June 4, 2022, WorldCom's Internet Division, UUNet, identified the user as MSN/Maury Travis. This led to the identification of the user's real name, Maury Troy Travis of Ferguson. Before this, back in 2001, Maury also hinted about his crime to one of his co-workers. He told him that East St. Louis was a good place to hide objects due to minimal police presence. He also told his co-worker's girlfriend, who worked at a TV station, that prostitutes' bodies were dumped in the same area. Maury didn't state that he was the one who killed them, but he said he knew about it from a friend. The taunting letter to the editor and his hints to co-workers suggest that Maury might have been one of those serial killers who craved attention. His actions indicate a desire to be found, a twisted sense of power derived from the fear he instilled in the community. This information provided the basis for surveillance, and on June 7, 2002, an arrest and search warrant.
I knocked. I said, FBI, we have a search warrant. I announced at least 3 times.
The warrant led to the discovery of evidence, including DNA and tire tread marks, linking Maury, a 36-year-old waiter, to some of the killings.
Mr. Shorts, the first thing out of his mouth was, "It's 7 o'clock in the morning." And you're right, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. And we're serving a federal search warrant. Okay, why are you here? And our response was, you know why we're here. He dropped his head. He said, yeah, I know why you're here.
Investigators launched a thorough search of Maury's residence in Ferguson, Missouri, uncovering a horrifying scene. Hidden within the depths of his home, they discovered a torture chamber. The ground floor of his home was tidy and well-maintained. The woman who lived with him, identified as his girlfriend, told police she had no clue about the basement and had never been there. While police officers examined the house and basement, FBI agents and other investigators conducted a 2-hour interrogation of Maury in his living room. They learned that his mother owned the residence and had allowed him to stay there. Authorities later revealed that Maury evaded giving direct answers and instead inquired about how they had located him. Upon being informed that the computer-printed map had led them to his doorstep, Maury became enraged. Shortly after police escorted Maury outside and placed him in a car, he consented to accompanying the police downtown for further questioning. Computer forensics experts entered the house to inspect Maury's computer, where they uncovered drafts of the letter sent to journalist Bill Smith. Downstairs, investigators uncovered a house of horrors. They found bloodstains on the walls and on the ceiling and on the carpet and furniture as well. Within this, they discovered chilling torture instruments, a menacing stun gun, and newspaper clippings documenting his heinous crimes. But the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. Videotapes capturing Maury's unspeakable acts of violence, subjecting his victims to horrific acts. The evidence from this torture chamber, coupled with DNA analysis, suggested that he committed the murders of between 12 and 20 women. He had been preying on vulnerable individuals, many of whom were drug addicts and sex workers, in the states of Missouri and Illinois between 2000 and 2022. Travis asked for a soda during questioning. Later, the can he drank from was sent to the lab for testing. DNA swabs were taken from the area near the opening of the can for epithelial cells in Travis's saliva, which could be used for DNA testing. Travis's DNA profile was then compared to the biological material found on two of the murder victims, Yvonne Cruz and Brenda Beasley. St. Louis Police Captain Harry Heger said that the investigators also found a crude diagram in Maury's home, showing plans for a basement extension. Heger said that Maury was planning to build 2 cells in the basement, where he could chain the women, and then he was planning to build vents connecting the basement to the outside. Heger said that Maury also made a list of things that he needed to keep the woman captive for some time, and that one of the items on the list was adult diapers. We spoke about the victims who were identified, but now let us uncover a few who are not known till the present. On May 25, 2002, the tragic case of St. Charles County Jane Doe came to light, adding another victim to the list of serial killer Maury Travis. The woman's remains were discovered near West Alton, Missouri, leaving her identity shrouded in mystery for 21 years. The discovery of St. Charles County Jane Doe unfolded following the anonymous letter sent to local reporter Bill Smith on May 21, 2002. The skeletal remains of St. Charles County Jane Doe were found west of Highway 67 and south of St. Charles Street, scattered over a 30-foot wide area. It was determined that she was a female between the ages of 25 and 35, of black ethnicity, and approximately 5'4" in height. One or more limbs and one or both hands were not recovered. The remains found at the crime scene included a sleeveless coarse blues denim dress with metal buttons, a black and silver V-neck stretch shirt with 3/4-length sleeves, a black spandex top, a torn piece of blue jean-type material, a white cotton tube sock, a blue shoestring-type tie-up in the back, and a thin white cotton fragment. A few months prior, on March 28, 2002, another discovery had been made: the remains of an unidentified woman. She would come to be known as Monroe County Jane Doe, one of the 3 victims of the notorious St. Louis serial killer, Maury Travis. Her identity remains a mystery, her story shrouded in silence. She was believed to be between the ages of 29 and 50, her African American heritage evident in her skin tone. She stood at 5 feet 1 inch tall. Her petite frame weighed about 105 pounds. Her dark brown hair bore the mark of a healed fracture on her forehead, possibly a mark of a childhood injury. There was no indication that she had ever given birth. At the time of her discovery, they could find only skeletal remains, along with a green shirt and the letter M and the word Mavericks in orange lettering. Her attire was completed by khaki canvas shorts and a brown leather belt with a silver buckle. These simple garments provided the only clues to her identity, silent witnesses to her life. Just a few weeks before that, on March 11, 2002, in Marine, Illinois, the remains of Madison County Jane Doe were found. Madison County Jane Doe was believed to be between the ages of 23 and 30. Her ethnicity identified as black. Her height was estimated to be between 5'1" and 5'6", and she weighed around 105 pounds. She also had dark hair. When discovered, the victim's decomposed body was clad in a red and white checkered flannel-style shirt, bearing the brand Tommy Hilfiger. and a pair of gray shorts from the brand Second Skins. A little under 2 months before that, St. Clair County Jane Doe, a woman whose identity remains a mystery, was discovered on January 30, 2002. Her skeletal remains were found in Mascota, Illinois, though the exact cause of her death remains undetermined. She is presumed to be one of the unidentified victims of serial killer Maury Travis. At the time of her discovery, she was believed to be between the ages of 20 and 40, of African American descent. Her skeletal remains revealed clues about her life, including 3 piercings in her right ear, a healed fracture above her left ankle, and additional healed fractures on her nasal bones, left second rib, wrist, and below her neck. She was found wearing a black velour sleeveless catsuit, bearing the brand Jason Matthews, with full-length legs. 2 yellow metal rings adorned her left middle finger. People were shocked and confused by how a man with such an appealing personality could be involved in these terrible crimes. The mother of one of his ex-girlfriends from Pagedale expressed her shock and disbelief over the news of Maury's arrest. Her daughter had dated him back in 2001, and she described him as a perfect gentleman, who always seemed happy and laid back. She couldn't believe that the man she knew could be different from the person now accused of such heinous crimes. Maury was suspected of being involved in the murders of 12 women, and he was also charged with 2 counts of kidnapping. Federal court documents linked him to these crimes. Police investigators believed that Maury may have killed more than 17 women in total. Following his arrest on June 7, 2002, Maury was taken into custody for interrogation and was placed on preventative monitoring until his trial for the alleged offenses. Just when St. Louis thought justice had been served with Maury's arrest on June 7, 2002, the city saw darkness again. 3 days later, on June 10, 2002, Maury planned to escape his sentence. He did that in the most unthinkable way possible. Maury Travis reportedly wrote a brief note on a sheet of paper in his 8th floor jail cell in Clayton. Outside the cell, another inmate tasked with monitoring Maury attempted to keep watch through a window. Maury had no desire to spend the rest of his life in prison or face execution by injection. He conveyed to those who would read his final words. Instead, he decided to end his life on his own terms. He explained that he left a note to demonstrate, "You guys didn't kill me." His note read, "Dear Mom, I'm sorry for the pain this caused you and the family. My death seems to be the only way out and a fast end to all the publicity. You were the best mother a man could have, but I've been sick for a long time, sick in the head, since I was about 14. I don't know why. I was just sick. I've never felt normal or happy at any time in my life. I think about the life I lead and what's ahead of me. This seems the best solution for all involved, especially me, because I won't spend the rest of my life locked up, or worse, let them kill me with a needle. Tell Grandma, Marina, James, and everybody I love them dearly. I love you the most, but you know that. Forever your son, Toby Travis." Jail regulations prohibited the inmate assigned to the anti-self-harm vigil from maintaining a clear view of what was to transpire, and the guards, violating jail rules, skipped 2 15-minute checks, providing Maury with 45 minutes of privacy to carry out his plan.
To say that I was angry, and to say that people in the newsroom were angry about it and that the community was angry about it is really an understatement. I think people were furious. And the families of those women should have been furious. That absolutely no way should have ever been allowed to happen.
When Mr. Travis hung himself, he took all the answers with him.
According to Clayton police, Maury meticulously threaded a torn strip of bedsheet through small holes in a jail wall vent, 6 feet from the floor, and looped the other end around his neck. He placed a pillowcase over his head, stuffed additional cloth into his mouth, and somehow managed to tie his hands behind his back.
I think it's amazing that it's such an incredible tool that through analyzing the computer, we were able to catch someone that was committing crimes like this.
12 years after Maury himself died in prison, his mother, Sandra Travis, still owned the home where he committed his horrific acts in 2014. She rented the home to Katrina McGaw, without mentioning the house's dark past. McGaw learned about the house's history from a television documentary and requested to break her lease, but Sandra refused. News 4 contacted Sandra, who claimed she had informed McGaw about the house's past. McGaw denied this, stating she would have remembered the murders if Sandra had told her. Technically, landlords are not obligated to disclose information about a home's past. In this country, landlords are only required to report physical defects. The St. Louis Housing Authority intervened, allowing McGaw to move out at the end of the month, despite Sandra's objections. The situation was complex. On one hand, it was understandable that Sandra, the mother of a serial killer, would want to put the past behind her. She was legally entitled to rent the house without disclosing any information about past events, but it may not be ethically right to do so. On the other hand, McGaw, who had a 2-year-old daughter, was uncomfortable living in a house where women were tortured and murdered. She also mentioned that her daughter had been occasionally playing near the same pool in the basement where Maury Travis tied up his victims. Considering how disturbing the whole situation was, McGaw understandably wanted to move out as soon as possible. Sadly, the victims found no closure. Moreover, several victims remain unidentified, adding to the heartbreak of this case. After witnessing these tragic events, one thing becomes evident. You never truly know who lives next door. This monstrous individual was carrying out these heinous acts right beneath everyone's noses, escaping notice even from those close to him. What's truly confounding is the mystery surrounding his actions. How could he commit 17 murders in his basement without anyone suspecting a thing? Not even the woman he dated. And then, the ultimate enigma. Why did he choose to end his own life in that prison cell? Was the prison reality more horrific than the agony these women faced? Or was he such a narcissist that he couldn't bear anyone else deciding when his life would end?
We went in, he sat down, he said, "Marlene, I have bad news. Susan was found in the trunk of her car." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Susan was murdered."
Taraskievicz was a Northwest Airlines baggage handler at Logan Airport. Her body was found in the trunk of her car in Revere, a day and a half after she had left the airport to get sandwiches for coworkers.
On Saturday, September 12, 1992, Susan Taraskievicz, a 27-year-old woman from Saugus, Massachusetts, headed to work. Susan was an employee at the Logan Airport near Revere, Massachusetts, and worked as a baggage supervisor. That particular night, Susan was scheduled to work from 11 p.m. on September 12, 1992, till 7 a.m. the next day. However, around 1 a.m. on Sunday, September 13, 1992, Susan left the airport in her car, saying that she was going to get some sandwiches for her coworkers. Sadly, Susan never returned. Just the next day, on September 14, 1992, Susan's car was found abandoned in the parking lot of an auto repair company. When the detectives arrived to look into the matter, they found Susan's body stuffed into the trunk of her car. An investigation into the case made the detectives uncover Susan's life of suffering and a fraudulent scheme. What happened to Susan that night when she left the airport? What was this fraudulent scheme, and was it related to Susan's murder? Saugus, situated in Essex County, Massachusetts, is a charming town nestled within the vibrant greater Boston area. This historic gem, known for its rich heritage, Saugus boasts a tapestry of historic landmarks, exceptional public services, and a thriving local business community. Although Saugus offers both its residents and visitors a warm and welcoming community with a crime rate that aligns with the national average, the town isn't safe from all the dangers. This takes us back to a night in 1992 when 27-year-old Susan Taraskievicz wandered into the dark and never returned home. Susan Taraskievicz, affectionately known as Sue, was born on February 13, 1965, to her parents Ron and Marlene Taraskievicz.
Her childhood unfolded in Saugus, Massachusetts, where she shared her formative years with her brother, Ronald, and her sister, Deborah. Throughout her high school days, Sue was both creative and authentic. She enjoyed roller skating, running track, and making art. With the remarkable talents and intelligence Sue possessed, her teachers described her as a gifted person. She had a kind and giving nature, always wanting to help others, and was seen as a good-hearted person with a warm smile. Her friends and family described her as feisty, yet warm and compassionate. She was a quiet and kind student who loved the Snoopy character from Charles Schulz's wildly famous comic strip called Peanuts. There was also a time when Sue was an inspiring cartoonist and even traveled to San Francisco to meet Charles Schulz in person. Upon her graduation from Saugus High School in 1983, Sue continued her educational journey, enrolling at Salem State College, North Shore Community College, and later the Massachusetts College of Art and Design. Sue's life was marked by her creativity, kindness, and a determination to follow her dreams. Sue ultimately landed a job with an airlines company in 1989. Sue made history by becoming the second woman to join Northwest Airlines as a ground services employee on the ramp at Logan Airport in Boston. Working in a male-dominated airline industry, Sue faced numerous challenges, as she was often subjected to harsh treatment by her coworkers. But she was fearless when it came to displaying her capabilities and standing her ground. Her responsibilities included loading and unloading baggage and de-icing planes. Despite the occasional hectic nature of her job, Susan rarely had any complaints. During Sue's time at Northwest Airlines, she went from cleaning jet interiors to achieving yet another milestone in her career in 1992.
Went from 3 different jobs, boarding. She did cleaning the planes, but she wanted to get on the ramp so bad. And the thing that she liked the most was de-icing the planes. So she fought for the job for 3 years. They gave it to another male employee that could not do the job. She was more qualified. She fought for 3 years and got it, and she got all her back pay for it. She handled it very well. She'd come home and say, I handled 100,000 bags today, or whatever. It's not a job I wanted her to do. And I told her that I didn't think as a female, especially back then, it was a job for women. But she said that's what she wanted to do. And I said, well, as long as you're careful, and remember, you are a female.
Sue's determination and loyalty towards her work didn't go unnoticed, and she was handed the role of baggage supervisor, which made her the first woman ever to hold the position for Northwest Airlines at Logan Airport. With the barriers she broke within the airline industry, Sue's professional journey paved the way for many young women to follow their dreams. Although Sue liked working at the airport, she often found herself dreaming about becoming a firefighter someday. And soon, Sue's career path took an unexpected turn when she took the firefighter placement exam and excelled at it. She secured the 8th position on the reserve list for the Swampscott Fire Department and was hoping to join the force soon. Sue was clearly not afraid by the idea of entering other male-dominated industries. She was a career-driven woman, and she was not going to let anything stop her. Sadly, before Sue could hear back from the Swampscott Fire Department, something awful happened. Although Sue lived with her parents, her hectic work schedule often kept her busy at the airport. A lot of times Sue would work overnight and weekend shifts, which frequently took her away from her home, making her miss out on the time she would get to spend with her family. Marlene, Sue's mother, recalled that there were days when she and Sue would hardly get to see each other. Their interactions had been limited to brief passing moments. Marlene would only know that Sue was home when she noticed her work uniform left in a heap of laundry just outside her bedroom door. It was Saturday on September 12, 1992, and Sue had been scheduled to work another night shift which began at 11 p.m. and would end by 7 a.m. the next day. It was one of the busiest shifts, and Sue knew that it was going to be a long night. Although having worked for Northwest Airlines for more than 3 years, Sue had learned her way around these kind of shifts. She knew which hours would be less packed and which ones would not even let her breathe. While working her shift around 1 a.m. on September 13, 1992, Sue offered to fetch some sandwiches for her crew members. She drove her sky blue Toyota Tercel off the airport grounds and headed towards her go-to restaurant in Revere. Hours went by, but Sue never returned. Back at home that same morning, when Marlene didn't see Sue's uniform in the laundry heap, she didn't pay much attention to it. Since Sue worked overtime in the past, Marlene thought that Sue probably got caught up with and would return later. The next day, on Monday, September 14th, 1992, Marlene noticed that Sue still wasn't home and the laundry pile was empty. It was unlike Sue to not come home for 2 days in a row without informing her family. That was when Marlene grew concerned and called the airport to check if Sue was okay. To her surprise, Marlene found out that Sue had never shown up for work on Monday, September 14th, 1992. As fear crept in, Marlene reached out to the authorities and reported Sue missing.
I got in my car and went to Saugus Police Station. Went into the police station and the female officer asked what she could do for me. I said, I'm here to report my daughter missing. The phone rang. She excused herself and came back and said, Mrs. Taraskievicz, we found your daughter. We've lived in Saugus 32 years, so we knew the chief of police. She said, you need to go in. We went in, he sat down, he said, Marlene, I have bad news. Susan was found in the trunk of her car. I said, what do you mean? He said, Susan was murdered.
That same morning, on Monday, September 14th, 1992, a manager for Bravo Auto and Tire Service Company, which was located almost 4 miles from Logan Airport in the town of Revere, was heading to work around 7:30 a.m. Driving through Lee Burbank Highway, commonly known as Route 1A, he noticed a car parked in the Services Center parking lot. He couldn't recall anyone from his workplace having that car. When he walked up to the vehicle to have a closer look, he found blood dripping from the trunk of the car. He rang up the authorities to look into the matter, and shortly after, officers from Massachusetts Police Department arrived at the scene. The detectives instantly recognized the car. It was the same sky blue Toyota Tercel Marlene had described to them when she reported Sue missing. Slightly aware of what was coming next, the detectives opened the trunk, and their eyes were met with a gruesome sight. 27-year-old Susan Taraskiewicz's blood-covered body had been crumpled up and stuffed inside to fit into the small area. Sue had bruises and stab wounds on her body, which implied that she had been beaten up before being stabbed to death. The detectives broke the tragic news to Sue's family. Ron, Sue's father, pulled himself together and held Marlene in his arms as she burst out crying. When the detectives searched the car, they found that the money Sue was going to use to buy the sandwiches was still with her. This implied that she never made it to the restaurant that night. Even though Sue had neither been robbed or assaulted, her family initially assumed that the attack on Sue was not planned. The detectives, too, at first thought that Sue's murder was a random act of violence and believed that she was killed somewhere else before being driven to the auto shop. But as the investigation progressed further, detectives found themselves uncovering a much deeper conspiracy, which led them back to Logan Airport, Sue's workplace. When questioning Sue's coworkers, detectives found out that Sue had received a phone call from someone right before she left to pick up sandwiches for her coworkers on the night before her disappearance. Finding out who this caller was became the utmost priority for the detectives. Even after spending hours conducting interviews with Sue's crewmates at Logan Airport, detectives couldn't identify who this person was. Nobody at Sue's workplace seemed to have a clue or cared enough to even ask Sue about this mysterious caller. Questioning Sue's family, neighbors, and friends wasn't of much help either. Marlene, Sue's mother, believed that Sue might have gone to meet the person who was on the other end of the phone that night, but she would never have gone alone. According to Marlene, Sue was a careful woman who was aware of the dangers that lurked in Saugus. She would never go out alone during those hours of the night. Furthermore, Sue's co-workers told the detectives that when Sue didn't come back to the airport, the thought that something bad had happened to her never struck their minds. And instead of reporting Sue missing, they marked her time card till the day her body was found.
According to Sue's attendance log, she had returned from the sandwich run, left for home at the end of her shift, and returned to work the next day. When the police asked the reason behind this, they said that they were covering for her. However, Marlene was very suspicious about this. The very first question she asked Sue's coworkers was if Sue had ever done this before, if Sue ever left work and did not come back. There was a sense of regret on the faces of Sue's coworkers as they replied with a no. Marlene still couldn't understand why no one at work reported Sue missing. Extreme thoughts were taking over her mind as she sensed some sort of foul play from the coworkers. She wondered if there was a cover-up of some sort involved and asked the detectives to look closely into it. On Saturday, September 19, 1992, a funeral service for Sue was held at the Bisbee Porcella Funeral Home, 549 Lincoln Avenue in Saugus. Dozens of her loved ones gathered and mourned the loss as Sue was laid to rest. The investigation surrounding Sue's case took a serious twist when two of her coworkers, Joseph Nuzzo and Robert Bobby Brooks, were identified as potential suspects in Sue's murder. Amidst the complex web of relationships between the three of them, it was revealed that Sue and Brooks briefly shared a romantic relationship that didn't end well. Since then, Sue tried to avoid any contact with Nuzzo and Brooks because she would almost always end up getting in trouble. One time, Brooks even broke Sue's radio for no reason at all. When Sue's then boyfriend confronted Brooks about the same, he verbally threatened him and Sue. In another incident which took place sometime in April 1989, Sue attempted to intervene in a physical altercation involving Nuzzo and two other colleagues. Nuzzo's response to this was far from appropriate. He resorted to throwing derogatory slurs aimed at Sue. The severity of his behavior led Northwest Airlines to temporarily terminate his employment, which was a much-needed action. Even during his time off, Nuzzo didn't let go of the strong grudges he held against Sue. In roughly 6 months, Brooks made an unsettling return to Northwest Airlines, gaining his employment back, all while nursing hate toward Sue for his prior dismissal. All the hatred and resentment Nuzzo harbored was unleashed as a wave of harassment directed at Sue. He vandalized her car, punctured her tires, stalked her residence, made anonymous threatening phone calls, and confided in others, including Brooks, about his desire to take revenge on Sue. The brewing tensions and ominous events painted a picture of a sinister and unsettling chapter in Sue's life. Now that the detectives had figured out what went down between Sue, Brooks, and Nuzzo, they were determined to find out more about the two men. And in no time, the detectives made yet another scandalous discovery. In the summer of 1992, Northwest Airlines had been connected to a federal investigation. As a group of cunning baggage handlers ran a stolen credit card ring, an intriguing and illicit operation came to light, which had been going on right under the nose of their unsuspecting employer at Northwest Airlines. Their scheme revolved around intercepting shipments of fresh credit cards being transported on Northwest jets. These employees weren't just handling baggage, they were running a multi-million-dollar scam. Their operation was both bold and effective. They stole the credit cards, utilized them for their own gain, going on shopping sprees, until finally peddling them to eager buyers. The final tally of their gains from this fraud was staggering, reaching a jaw-dropping total of over $7 million. And not so surprisingly, the scandal was led by Joseph Nuzzo himself. As soon as Nuzzo joined the airlines again, he began stealing credit cards from mailbags. He was very careful though, making sure that nobody was watching when he did the awful deed. However, Nuzzo knew he couldn't go on forever without his employees finding out about his secret, and so he started to loop in his other crewmates along with him. Brooks became a part of it as well. By August 1992, credit card companies started asking questions, and Nuzzo and his gang could feel the noose of suspicion tightening around their necks. Later that same month, Nuzzo was fired. Along with a few other baggage handlers, Nuzzo was subpoenaed by a grand jury, and the case was still being looked into. Detectives investigating Sue's murder were able to link her case to the scam led by Nuzzo because of two major reasons. The first being that Nuzzo believed Sue had ratted him out to the authorities. Nuzzo didn't shy away from expressing his anger towards Sue, even though she claimed that she didn't have a clue about the fraud that had been going on. Nuzzo harassed her and warned her that if she testified against him in court, she would face severe consequences. However, the detective's suspicions grew stronger when they learned that just 1 week after Nuzzo was fired because of the whole incident, Sue was found murdered. Even though Nuzzo denied having anything to do with Sue's murder, he was now a potential suspect in the case. But the detectives were unable to uncover any evidence that could strongly link Nuzzo to Sue's murder. With no new evidence or any potential leads, the investigation into Sue's homicide lost pace, and the case eventually went cold. A year passed, and there were still no signs of Sue's murderer being found. All her family had was many unanswered questions. There wasn't a day that went by when Marlene didn't think about the question, who could have wanted Sue dead? Marlene left Sue's room untouched, just as she had left it. Marlene couldn't gather the strength to walk in, as it would bring back a whirlwind of Sue's memories, eventually making her realize that there weren't going to be any more of those. She tried to do so before, but the pain was too much to bear. But later in 1993, when Christmas was just around the corner, Marlene finally walked into Sue's room for the first time since her murder. She wanted to get something that belonged to Sue and reminded everyone of her, so she could put it by the Christmas tree for the holidays. Upon entering Sue's closet, Marlene's eyes fell upon her daughter's briefcase lying on the floor. She opened it, and amongst the many other things that were inside, she picked out Sue's diary. Unaware of the pain coming her way, she flipped through the diary. Her heart ached as she read the disturbing revelations Sue had penned across pages. In gut-wrenching detail, Sue had described the torture and harassment she had silently endured during her time at Northwest Airlines. These were painful incidents that Sue had never shared with her family. And as the diary bore witness to Sue's suffering, she continued to speak from beyond the grave.
I found a diary where she had jotted down a lot of things, you know, what they were doing and things like that. And that's when it started to really escalate.
Within those pages, Sue had talked about the disturbing graffiti and quotes that her male co-workers had etched in the airport's men's rooms, and even the cargo holds of jets. All of those were directed at Sue and were insulting, demeaning, and extremely malicious in nature. The extent of the cruelty and harassment detailed in Sue's diary left Marlene in complete shock. She was aware of Sue's struggles with her male colleagues, who were resistant to the idea of having a female boss. But the diary entries revealed a much graver situation than she had ever imagined.
She said the men gave her a very hard time. A lot of times they didn't want to do anything, and she'd get stuck doing it. And she said it really aggravated her because she knew they just didn't want her as the boss.
The situation grew even more distressing when Sue discovered a disturbing illustration on her own locker. The sketch showed a coffin adorned with Sue's name on it. Sue had finally had enough. She refused to suffer in silence anymore and took a stance by filing numerous formal complaints with both Northwest Airlines management and her union, hoping that there would be a better work environment for herself and the other female employees. However, the response from management proved to be deeply disheartening. Instead of addressing the issue, they offered Sue some cold advice, urging her to let it go. They even recommended her to not show any signs of being bothered by the harassment and instructed her to simply sit back and ignore it. But no good ever came from it. In the end, Sue always found herself alone and helpless, as anyone who would step in to defend her would face threats and abuse at the hands of their dominant coworkers. The harassment didn't end at the workplace. In her diary, Sue documented a series of distressing anonymous phone calls that she received during almost all the nights she had spent at home. She even recorded a couple of those haunting calls. In one particular unnerving instance, the caller taunted Sue with the words, "Get off our backs, Sue T. baby." When she ordered the caller to reveal their identity, the caller remained silent, adding another layer of fear and apprehension to her already troubled existence. Surprisingly, Sue's diary only covered her initial 8.5 months in her new position. However, it appeared that the discrimination against her still went on at Northwest Airlines. Even in the face of such mistreatment, her determination remained steady. She confided in friends and colleagues who stood by her side and gave her the boost to stand up against her tormentors. Sue was aware that if she resigned and walked away, it would only be a win for her male coworkers who had been harassing her. She was not going to let that happen, as it would make it even more difficult for other women to get a job here. Sue's plan was simple. She would continue to show up for work daily and diligently perform her job, making a statement that she wasn't going to give up. Amidst the shocking content, Marlene couldn't help but wonder if this relentless harassment might have played a sinister role in Sue's tragic murder. The diary was a chilling testament to what Sue had endured during her employment at the airport. And since it had shed new light on the possible motives behind the heinous crime, Marlene decided to let authorities in on this newfound information, hoping to bring justice to her daughter. The detectives arrived at Logan Airport and began questioning Northwest Airlines employees, who they suspected had been mentioned in Sue's diary. Deborah Mazeikis, one of Sue's co-workers, said that some men in her crew resented women in a position of authority. Some came to terms with it while the others liked it. According to Deborah, Sue was always very conscientious about her job and always tried to make it a better place to work. Sue was certain that she could make a difference for the minorities and the women who worked there. Everything Marlene read in Sue's diary inched her closer towards believing that Sue was set up by her coworkers that night on September 13, 1992. She was sure that Sue had been lured to go to the restaurant by someone she most definitely knew. According to Marlene, Sue's coworkers thought that by harassing her, they could make her quit the job and get rid of her. But when that didn't work, they resorted to doing the most horrible thing. Although the new developments in Sue's case gave detectives a new direction, they eventually led to another dead end. In 1995, Sue's family filed a lawsuit against Northwest Airlines for allegations of harassment Sue had to endure during her tenure at the company. Subsequently, both the parties involved reached a settlement. According to the terms of the agreement of the settlement, Northwest Airlines handed a $75,000 payout to Sue's estate, along with a commitment to offer a $250,000 reward to anyone who would provide any information leading to an arrest and conviction in Sue's case. The settlement became recognized because of being one of the most substantial discrimination settlements ever awarded in the state of Massachusetts. Northwest Airlines denied being a part of any foul play in the matter of Sue's murder. That same year, Nuzzo faced conviction on multiple charges associated with the credit card scheme, and he was handed a 3-year prison sentence. Brooks, on the other hand, opted to cooperate with the police and subsequently pleaded guilty to theft and fraud charges linked to the scheme. He received a 3-year probation sentence. In the course of time, 10 more Northwest employees found themselves indicted and subject to varying sentences in connection with the case. Alongside some of Sue's other co-workers at Northwest, both Nuzzo and Brooks were still considered potential suspects in the homicide. Regrettably, the case went cold, leaving many questions unanswered. Although Sue's father Ron passed away in 2011 and Sue's brother Ronald passed away in 2007, Marlene still stands strong, fighting every day for her daughter.
I'm saying it's 25 years. Where did that go? I just can't believe that nobody has come forward. You know, you think the guilt.
For many long years, Marlene Taraskievicz remained committed to keeping her daughter in the public eye, persistently seeking answers. The identity of her daughter's caller still eludes her, a question that has continued to haunt her. Witnessing numerous other cold cases being solved in recent times has ignited a glimmer of hope within her. She is inspired to keep working towards getting justice for her long-gone daughter. It brings closure to the families, she reflected, highlighting that she still doesn't have that much-needed closure.
I am not going away. But what I want to say to everyone is, please, I've been asking you for 24 years. My Susan was a hard worker. She worked hard at Northwest. She treated everyone equally. She was a good person. She would help you whenever she could. And I know today, if Susan was here and got to enjoy her nieces and her nephew, they would just love her truly. When I tell them stories since they were little about Susan, we would laugh. I have so many things to this day still in my home. When I talk about pencils and papers and books, Nana, was this what Susan had? Yeah. Did this come from Susan? Yeah. Susan would have done anything for them. And I tell them she would have loved you more than anything in the world because she did love people. And she felt that people should be fair. And she tried very hard at Christmas time, Halloween. She lived downstairs. We had a little apartment that belonged to my father-in-law. And she would set that up at Christmas time and Halloween and have all the kids come in. She would make them costumes. She would give them treats. They just couldn't wait for the things that Susan would do. I've heard many people at the airline tell me what a wonderful girl she was and how she would go out of the way for them.
With unwavering determination, she conveyed a clear message to the person responsible for her daughter's murder, warning them to remain vigilant at all times. They can't rest easy now, since she will never give up, and one day, eventually there will be justice.
These people that did this are looking over their shoulder every year because I'm not going anywhere. I am a fighter. My daughter was a fighter. They thought they would really get to her and she would quit. But if Susan really wanted something and she really loved what she was doing, you wouldn't get her to quit. And that's the sad thing. I mean, I'm proud of her for that because, you know, a lot of women have to go through so much on a job. And management, unions, they don't really take care of them like they do the men. But I'm proud that she fought as hard. Women are coming forward and telling what they're going through. It took Susan a long time to do that, and most women didn't do that. But now they are, and I'm so proud that they're doing that because, you know, we're all entitled to do the job you want. As long as you're qualified for it, why not do it? I hope that seeing what Sue went through, now they know just how serious this is and harassment and that, and come forward.
In her last message, issued on Wednesday, September 13th, 2023, Marlene Taraskievicz extended a heartfelt plea to anyone who had information about Sue's case and asking them to come forward. Her quest for justice and closure for her daughter had endured many difficult years, and now she wouldn't rest until the culprit is behind bars. Marlene is in constant touch with the detectives working on Sue's case and is hopeful that someday she will be able to look her daughter's killers in the eye in court. Marlene recalled that she had shared precious moments with Sue on her 50th birthday. Marlene laughed as she reminisced about the fun night out with her family.
Last time I saw Sue was my 50th birthday, and my husband took us all into a restaurant in Boston, and she was never on time for certain things, but across the calendar she put, I was on time. And of course, when you get there and we had dinner, they start talking, my three children, about things that they did that you weren't supposed to know. But we had a wonderfully, and that was the last time. So I am very grateful for that. I mean, as sad as it is, I am just so glad that it was on such a special day.
Marlene expressed her deep gratitude for the cherished memory. Despite the underlying sadness of the situation, she found solace in the fact that that memory was linked to such a significant day, making it all the more special. On Wednesday, September 13th, 2023, the state police once again stated they believe that some people knew about Susan Taraskiewicz's murder, but haven't told the police. They already had some information regarding the case, but they needed more details to be sure. They wanted anyone with information to come forward and have asked the public for help in finding the person or people involved in Sue's murder. While they haven't found any new leads in the case, they were happy that Susan's story was talked about on a podcast called The Deck. This would help keep Sue's case in the talks, and if her killer was listening, it would remind them that justice wasn't far away. Thursday, September 14th, 2023, marked 31 years since 27-year-old Susan Taraskiewicz's body was found in the trunk of her car. The Massachusetts State Police made it clear they were still very committed to finding the person who hurt her. Even though a long time had passed, they were still determined to catch the person responsible. As Sue's mother awaits justice, the police are actively looking for Sue's killer. They do not want to leave any stones unturned and are pursuing traditional street-level investigative methods coupled with advanced forensic techniques on the evidence they currently have. Additionally, they are reaching out to the public by creating playing cards that showcase homicide cases and missing persons. These cards are provided to state prison inmates, and the hope is that this might yield more information about the cases featured on the cards. In an old clip, Marlene urged the public to do their bit and help her out even if they had the slightest piece of information.
So, again, after 24 years, it is never, ever too late to do the right thing and to bring justice for us. Please, again, pick up that phone, call that hotline number, tell what you know. Even after 24 years, I'm sure you can remember something that will help us to bring Susan's death to a closure and give us the peace that we deserve and she deserves.
If anyone has information regarding Susan Taraskiewicz's murder, they are encouraged to contact the state police at 617-727-8817. Do you think the person who called Sue just before she left to get sandwiches was the same person who had been making those anonymous threatening calls to Sue for many nights? Did he lure Sue towards him by offering to reveal his identity? Do you think that the guilt would someday get to Sue's killer and they would eventually come forward? Let us know your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. If there is a case you'd like us to cover, don't hesitate to drop your recommendations in the comments section below.